Chapter 2440. James could probably understand the inner turmoil of these two second- and third-rate celebrities. In fact, when he'd first heard about this, he'd almost lost his breath. He had worked hard for decades, and last year, he had finally achieved some results. Now, he was only worth $20 million. But Qin Zhao actually didn't care about $200 million. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't be able to remain calm. But he also knew that Qin Zhao had a golden egg-laying chicken. Dash and Beer's market share in California had reached 80%. From low to high-end beer, Dash and Beer was basically the only one. Whether it was outside or local beer brands, they were either dead or crippled in California. People would only buy Dash and Beer in supermarkets. They would only choose other beers when they were out of stock. Dash and Beer had already started conquering other states. But due to supply and production restrictions, their market share in other states couldn't increase yet. So, the supermarkets in other states hadn't fully stocked it yet. Only Mara supermarkets in other states could supply Dash and Beer. However, due to the reputation of Dash and Beer, the sales of Dash and Beer in various states were also very good. Dash and Beer wasn't listed, so it didn't release financial reports. But this couldn't stop some financial media from calculating and speculating. James remembered watching a financial program calculating Dash and Beer's income not long ago. The final conclusion was that Dash and Beer could provide its owner with more than $2.5 billion in after-tax income every year. Mara supermarkets also didn't release the exact sales volume of Dash and Beer. Therefore, a large portion of Dash and Beer's sales volume hadn't been calculated. If Mara supermarket sales volume was included, Dash and Beer's annual net profit could be more than $3 billion. When James saw the report, his first thought was, how many popular movies do I have to make to earn $3 billion? He didn't know how much Qin Zhao had. But he knew that Qin Zhao would only get richer. Moreover, his money and assets weren't like those in finance or stocks. Today, it was worth $10 billion. Tomorrow, it would suddenly be worthless. Qin Zhao's assets wouldn't suddenly become worthless because Dash and Beer wasn't a listed company. The amount of money in his bank account would only increase, not decrease. America's annual sales of alcoholic beverages was more than $200 billion. Beer accounted for 70% of the total. In James' mind, if mountain beer could one day be distributed across America and had such an exaggerated market share like in California, how rich would Qin Zhao become? Of course, James' idea was shocking. However, this was almost impossible. That was because the productivity of Dash and Beer was limited. The current situation was basically the limit of Dash and Beer. Move faster, Jane, Rodale, you two should go put on your makeup. The whole family settled down in the Bright Moon Villa. Every child found their own room with ease. Qin Zhao jumped into the sea to reminisce with the Dolphin family and the 5 great generals. At the same time, he also brought some special ingredients. However, both the 5 tiger generals and the Dolphin family liked Qin Zhao's special ingredients very much. The water quality of the sea was getting better and better. Soaking in the seawater, Qin Zhao felt all the pores in his body relax. He happily breathed in and out the spiritual qi in the seawater. Huh! Qin Zhao suddenly frowned. Where did the old man go? The old man was the giant clam that Qin Zhao had discovered in the deep sea. Then Qin Zhao moved it to the nearby sea. The giant clam was more than 1,000 years old. That was why Qin Zhao named the giant clam Old Man. However, Qin Zhao searched around the coastline. He even used the small world to cover the nearby sea. He didn't find any traces of the old man. The giant clam could move on its own. However, ever since Qin Zhao had placed an old turtle's inner core here, the old man didn't go out anymore. Did someone steal it? Qin Zhao's expression darkened. His things had been stolen right in front of his house. Butler, have there been any ships approaching here recently? Qin Zhao asked the butler through his wireless Bluetooth headset. Yes, a large fishing boat appeared in the nearby sea. It belongs to Lassen Fishing Company. Just then, Qin Zhao suddenly felt a high beam shine on the sea. He immediately dove into the sea, but he was very unhappy. This was private waters. If a fishing boat entered their private waters, it would be equivalent to theft. Just then, Qin Zhao felt his body being hung. He reached out and pulled. It was a fishing net. The fishing boat was fishing in this area with a fishing net. Qin Zhao was furious. He tore the net apart. At the same time, he wrapped the net around the boat's propeller. "Damn, what's going on?" Parak yelled. "Why did the boat stop?" "Captain, it seems like the reef tore the net, and then the net wrapped around the propeller." "Fuck, what are you doing? This water isn't deep. Didn't you use the sonar to scan the depth before setting the net?" Parak yelled. "Hurry up and think of a solution. Captain, the propeller has been wrapped up by the net. We can't do anything now. We can only call for a tugboat," the crew member said with a sad face. "Fuck, how much money do we earn from one sea mission? Calling a tugboat costs $1,000 per kilometer. How much do you think it'll cost to tow our boat back to the port? But the net and the propeller must be dead. I don't care. If you can't think of a solution, you can go down and feed the sharks." Parak knew that they could only call for a tugboat now. His heart ached at the thought of having to pay for a tugboat. "Captain, there's someone in the water, there's someone in the water." By then, Qin Zhao had already emerged from the water. At the same time, he climbed onto a rope hanging from the side of the boat. Parak was burning with anger. Seeing someone climb onto his boat, he was even more furious. "Who are you? Get out!" Qin Zhao went up and grabbed Parak's neck, then pinned him to the pole. "This is my private sea. You're asking who I am? Did you tell me before your boat entered my private sea?" Cough. "Sir, this is a misunderstanding. Our boat malfunctioned and drifted here," Parak explained while coughing. Chapter 2441. While showing weakness to Qin Zhao, Parak's gaze drifted behind Qin Zhao, hinting at the crew behind Qin Zhao. A crew member slowly approached Qin Zhao with a stick. He raised his arms, wanting to hit the back of Qin Zhao's head. Clang! Instantly, Qin Zhao stumbled a few steps and fell to the ground. He covered his head with one hand and touched his ear with the other. "Butler, did you record it?" "Yes, master. I've recorded everything just now." Parak vaguely felt that something was wrong. "Who were you talking to?" Qin Zhao didn't answer Parak's question. Instead, he squeezed out the blood he'd prepared and smeared it all over his face. Then he stood up again. "You trespassed into my private waters to steal, causing me huge losses," Qin Zhao said calmly. "I discovered it and tried to stop it, but you tried to murder me." With that, Qin Zhao suddenly kicked the crew member who'd ambushed him. Parak's expression turned cold. "What nonsense are you talking about? Where's the giant clam you stole from my private waters?" Qin Zhao asked. The old man was extremely valuable. They couldn't kill him casually like normal giant clams and dig out his flesh. It could be said that the old man, alive, was the most valuable. Just then, all the crew members on the fishing boat came out with weapons. Qin Zhao grinned. This was exactly what he needed. In Moon Coast, the butler system was recording everything with a high magnification remote camera. It was also high definition and uncensored. Qin Zhao snatched a spear from a crew member who'd charged over and swept the end of the spear over. He smacked the crew member onto the deck and threw the spear out. He nailed another crew member's arm to the cabin wall. Then Qin Zhao started going all out. However, because they were all normal people, Qin Zhao didn't kill them. Soon, Qin Zhao had defeated everyone. Apart from the one nailed to the wall by the spear, the rest of the crew members lay on the ground, moaning in pain. Qin Zhao stared at Parak fiercely. "You're suspected of theft, trespassing into private waters, assault, and attempted murder. According to the Fortress Act, I have the absolute right and reason to kill all of you. Your families will have to compensate you with a large sum of money. I'll make your entire family sleep on the streets." Qin Zhao stared coldly at Parak. "See, sir? We admit that we secretly caught fish from your private waters, but you can't slander us, No, I can. My high-powered camera on the shore has already recorded all your crimes. You can't do that. Where is the giant clam that was stolen from my territory? Qin Zhao asked again. We were hired. The person in charge of the Marine Biology Research Institute hired us. The things are with them. Marine Biology Institute? Qin Zhao's face darkened. Was he inviting a wolf into the house? Qin Zhao took out his phone and called Alex. Hey Alex, you have a job. Qin Zhao didn't explain further. Instead, he called David. Hey David, there's a thief at my house. I need your help. Then Qin Zhao called Isaac. Isaac, do you know that Nanston Kira hired a fishing boat to steal from my private waters? What? You mean Professor Nanston? Yes, that's right. My precious pet was stolen by him. I don't know. After I contacted you that time, I resigned the next day. You know this. Okay, I know. This has nothing to do with you. Qin Zhao didn't plan on blaming it on Isaac. Qin Zhao brought a large group of police officers and a legal team led by Alex and broke into the Marine Biology Research Institute. This time, Qin Zhao didn't plan on letting it go. When Nanston Kira heard that a large group of police had arrived, he came out with a confused expression. But when he saw Qin Zhao, his expression changed. Mr. Qin. What do you mean? What do I mean? Professor Nanston, I originally respected your professionalism, but I didn't think that my trust in you would be exchanged for your evil intentions. You disappoint me. I don't understand. You don't understand? Qin Zhao sneered. Are you familiar with Lucent Ocean Fishing Company? Nanston Kira's expression changed drastically again. Mr. Qin, I think there's some misunderstanding between us. Can we talk in private? I don't think that's necessary. Qin Zhao shook his head. Stop. You can't go in. This is private. Seeing that the police were about to enter the research institute, Nanston immediately stopped them. But how could he stop the police? Nanston could only look at Qin Zhao. Mr. Qin, you don't understand the value of that giant clam. It's a huge treasure trove. You can extract the perfect factor from it. As long as you give me some time to study it, I'll be able to produce results. Then, we can share the results perfectly. It's an immeasurable amount of wealth. I won't work with thieves, Qin Zhao said with a snort. With that, Qin Zhao shook off Nanston Kira. Perhaps Nanston's passion for research had once made Qin Zhao admire him. But when he found out that Nanston had actually hired someone to steal from him, all his admiration turned into anger. Nanston Kira still wanted to talk to Qin Zhao. But Alex stopped him. Professor Nanston, my client will file a lawsuit against you. You're suspected of theft and attempted murder. Nonsense, when did I hire someone to murder? The crew of the fishing boat you hired has already admitted that they took your money and listened to your orders. They went to my client's private waters to steal and fish. The amount is huge, more than $100 million. In order to cover up the truth, they asked them to kill anyone who found out about their actions. Nanston Kira sat on the ground. He already understood that this was Qin Zhao's revenge. Mr. Nanston, you're now under arrest. At the same time, we'll also file a criminal lawsuit against you. Qin Zhao finally found the old man in a pool. Some of the old man's flesh had been cut off, but it didn't affect him overall. At the same time, it wouldn't threaten his life. Qin Zhao let out a long sigh of relief. Alex, I'll make sure he can't get out of prison for the rest of his life, forever. Chapter 2442. All right, calm down. Alex rarely saw Qin Zhao in such an angry state. According to the professor's confession, his original intention was to catch your shark, but he didn't get the shark. Instead, he fished up the giant clam. I don't care if he did it on purpose or not, Qin Zhao said, annoyed. Anyway, it's theft. Qin Zhao wasn't just angry that Nancy had stolen his things. More importantly, it was because of his betrayal and betrayal of her trust. Betrayal is not allowed at any time. Although the old master had been found. However, Qin Zhao was still furious. He went home with a face full of resentment. However, Chen Zhao was still worried. Chen Zhao called Andrews, although it was 3:50 in the morning. However, Andrews picked up the phone on the second ring. "Hello, Mr. Chen. How may I help you?" Andrews did not sound tired or annoyed at all. This was the kind of work he did, even though it was after work. But he still had to serve Chen Zhao like a god. "My Mingwe villa was robbed. The things I raised in the sea were secretly taken away by a fishing boat. Mr. Chen, I will protest with the Los Angeles City Hall and pressure them. No, the suspect has been caught, and the item has been recovered. As for the suspect's punishment, you don't have to worry about it. I want to ask, do you know of any way to monitor my private waters completely? The kind that can sound an alarm when any ship enters or leaves." "Yes," Andrews immediately replied. "About 10 sonar instruments will be installed along the Bright Moon coastline and the surrounding waters. This kind of sonar instrument will sink directly to the bottom of the sea after it is activated. It is mainly used in private marine fisheries and can also monitor the situation of the fish in the sea. Will this instrument cause pollution to the ecology of my sea? I heard that sonar can kill shoals of fish. Is that true? Also, Mr. Chen, I need to tell you something. Sonar mainly emits ultrasonic waves. Ultrasonic waves will not cause harm or threat to most fish and marine animals. What you said will kill the fish is the infrasound waves, and it is not ordinary infrasound waves. Ordinary infrasound waves will not cause too much of a problem. Only the infrasound waves created by the marine industry can kill the fish. Alright, my mind is in a mess. How about this, come to my house tomorrow? Okay, Mr. Chen. The next day, Chen Zhao sent the kids to school first. On the way home, he received a call from Andrews. "Mr. Chen, I'm already at your door. Sorry, I just dropped my child off at school. I'm on my way home now. My assistant is at home. I'll ask her to pick you up now." After hanging up, he called Portia and asked her to open the door for Andrews. When Chen Zhao got home, he saw another stranger besides Andrews. "Mr. Chen, nice to meet you. This is the expert I brought, Odhar. He can help you answer your questions." "Hello?" Chen Zhao shook hands with Odhar. "Portia, didn't you prepare tea for my guest?" "Boss, I've been changing Lil Larissa's diaper and preparing breakfast for little Jerlin, Sindora, and Mara after I got here," Portia complained. She was indeed a bit angry because Chen Zhao had suddenly moved to Mingwe Villa last night. He did not tell her at all, so she went straight to Mirror Lake Manor in the morning. In the end, she saw that James and his crew were filming in Mirror Lake Manor. After asking, she found out that Chen Zhao had actually come here. Then she ran over anxiously. When she arrived, it was already past 9 o'clock. "Mr. Chen, I already know what happened in your private sea," Andrews said. "If you need my help, please let me know. Those people are no longer a problem," Chen Zhao said. "I just need to be careful in case the same thing happens again in the future." At this time, Odhar said, "Mr. Chen, if that's the case, I can recommend 2 sonar instruments. I can assure you with my professionalism that either of these 2 products can solve the problem that's troubling you. I have sharks and dolphins in my private sea. They're all my friends. Can you guarantee that the sonar device won't harm them? Especially dolphins. I remember that dolphins can also emit ultrasonic waves. Will the sonar device mislead them?" "Mr. Chen, don't worry. Mr. Chen, don't worry about this. The sound waves emitted by dolphins are divided into 2 types. One is the ultrasonic wave used to detect the topography of the seabed and the school of fish, which is 200,000 to 300,000 Hz. The other is the low-frequency sound waves used to communicate with each other. These low-frequency sound waves are similar to human speech, and the ultrasonic waves emitted by sonar instruments far exceed these 2 types, even exceeding the upper limit of the ultrasonic waves that dolphins can hear, so it will not affect them. This kind of ultrasonic wave is similar to the use of mobile phones by humans. Mobile phones also have radiation, but the harm to humans is almost negligible." "What's the difference between the 2 devices you recommended?" Chen Zhao asked. Which one is good and which one isn't? The functions and effects of the two sonar devices are similar, Otar said. They're just different in convenience and price. Otar took out a few more explanations and continued. I'll be direct. These two products are sponsors of my lab, so of course my first recommendation is their product. But don't worry about the performance and quality. Their equipment is top-notch in the industry. You want me to buy one of them? Chen Zhao asked. Or do you want me to mix the two? Qin Zhao didn't really care if Otar got a commission or commission. For example, Andrews would get a commission every time he did something for Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao could accept all of this. Otar also trusted Qin Zhao. On the other hand, there were those who said that they didn't want any benefits, but were actually thieves and prostitutes. Like Nansen Kira, he seemed honest and loyal, as if he really wanted to dedicate his life to scientific research. But in the end, he came straight to Otar's house to steal. Chapter 2443. One of the two sonar brands is a super-large device. It's more complicated to install and adjust, but you only need two of them to cover the entire area of your private sea, Otar said. The other type is a small device. You can buy it directly, turn it on, and throw it into the sea. It will work normally, but the coverage is limited. I've looked at the area of Mr. Chen's private sea, and he needs about 15 of them. In terms of investment, the second type of device needs more money. What's the price difference? Chen Zhao asked. The first one costs $15 million, so two will be $30 million, Otar said. The second one costs $3 million. If you calculate it by 15 units, it will be $45 million. Of course, with my relationship with the equipment manufacturers of these two brands, I can probably save you about 10%. Is the device that expensive? Can the fishery afford to store this thing? Indeed. Other than a few fisheries, most small and medium-sized fisheries can't afford it. Their fisheries aren't even as valuable as the devices. Otar smiled bitterly. Even if large fishing boats have it, most of them only put it on the periphery of the fishery. Very few fisheries use it directly. But it's very effective against illegal fishing boats. Even if they come in a submarine, they can be discovered by the device. The price difference isn't a problem. I just want to know which one is better. In terms of coverage, the first type of 2 instruments and the second type of 15 instruments have the same coverage. There is no difference. However, some fishing boats are very bold. If they know that there is such equipment in this area, it is very likely that they will send divers into the water to destroy the equipment. So, Mr. Chen, which one do you think is more difficult to destroy, 2 instruments or 15 instruments? In other words, it's better to buy 15 small devices, right? When the price difference is no longer a problem, 15 small instruments are, of course, better than 2 big instruments. After all, it's quite troublesome to install and debug a big instrument. Moreover, once one of them malfunctions, half of the sea will be left unattended. Relatively speaking, 15 small instruments are, of course, safer. Okay, I'll order 20. I'll also put them on the periphery of my private sea area, Qin Zhao said. Andrews, I'll leave the rest to you. No problem, Mr. Chen, Andrews answered quickly. Otar was also very happy. After all, he could get a lot of commission from the purchase of the equipment. Mr. Chen, this is my name card. If you have any questions about the ocean in the future, you can call me. Otar felt that it was necessary to maintain a friendly relationship with Qin Zhao. The last marine biologist I knew just stole something valuable from my house, Qin Zhao said jokingly. That's right, Qin Zhao said. I know Nancy Kira. Otar said. Our research topics are different. Of course, this does not hinder his reputation in our industry. But please believe me, I may not be as good as him in terms of research topics, but my professionalism is definitely above his. Nancy Chilla was curled up on her bed at the moment. He knew he was in big trouble this time. He was charged with multiple offenses. If all these crimes were carried out, Then he would have to stay in prison until the end of time. He thought of an idea. That was to use his reputation in the field of oceanography to find some peers to endorse him. He could have them speak up for him in the media. He might not be able to wash away all the crimes, but he could at least reduce many of them. However, the few peers that his lawyer had contacted all rejected his request. Even his lawyer dealt with him in a perfunctory manner. Nancy Chilla knew that this was most likely Qin Zhao's doing. He'd originally thought that Qin Zhao was just rich. But Qin Zhao was Asian. Asians had always been honest in North America. He felt that what he'd done was so secretive. Qin Zhao couldn't possibly know. Even if he did, he couldn't do anything if he didn't have evidence. He didn't think that he would be exposed before he could even be happy for 2 days. On the second and third day, more and more bad news came from the lawyer. He heard that Qin Zhao had specially found an evaluation agency to evaluate and appraise the giant clam in order to deal a heavy blow to him. Nancy Chilla was an expert in marine biology. So, he knew the value of the giant clam better than anyone. It was not something that could be measured with money. He knew it even better than the owner, Qin Zhao. The giant clam was a priceless treasure. Normal giant clams had a lifespan of around 100 years. Occasionally, giant clams with a lifespan of 200, 300, or even longer would be discovered. In 2007, Fei Elby had discovered the largest and oldest giant clam to date. According to the tests, the giant clam was 500 years old. Its weight reached 1,758 kilograms, and at the same time, it produced 27 pearls. The inner wall of the carapace showed a jade-like phenomenon, which was similar to jade. That was why giant clams were also called living gems. Almost every country forbade harvesting giant clams. Nancy Chilla had also studied marine crustaceans. The giant clam shell becoming jade-like was an exception, and it was almost impossible for a living giant clam to become jade-like. But Nancy Chilla knew that if the giant clam didn't die after its lifespan, it would produce some special substance that would make the giant clam's shell become jade-like. Of course, that special substance could even obviously improve a person's body functions. Nancy Chilla called this special substance the perfect factor. This was also the reason why he'd wanted to steal Qin Zhao's shark at first, but after discovering the giant clam, he'd suddenly changed his mind. Because the giant clam was really too rare. It was even at least half the size of the world record for the largest giant clam. Nancy Chilla felt that if he could extract the giant clam's perfect factor and then artificially synthesize it, not only would he obtain great wealth, he could even overturn the entire world. But his dream had ended before it even started. Qin Zhao had destroyed his dream, his hope, his everything. That damned Asian! He didn't understand how great his research was at all. Chapter 2444. Knock, knock. Just then, the police outside the cell knocked on the iron bars with their batons. Someone outside wants to see you, the police said coldly. Nanston Kira tidied his clothes. Although he was wearing a prison uniform, he still paid attention to his appearance. Nanston Kira came to a single room. It was different from the visiting room where he'd met the lawyer last time. Nanston Kira keenly sensed that it wasn't his lawyer who'd asked to see him. Just then, a young man walked in from the other side. A young man with a smile as warm as the sun. Nanston Kira looked the young man up and down. He was cultured, young and handsome, dressed in style, and treated people humbly. That was what Nancy Kira felt from him. Hello, Professor Nanston. Please sit. Hello, who are you? Do we know each other? Nanston Kira had a good impression of the man. However, he was still instinctively wary. After all, he knew that he'd angered Qin Zhao. Who knew what Qin Zhao would do to him? Perhaps the young man in front of him was sent by Qin Zhao to tease him. It was even possible that they had arranged an even bigger trap for him. My name is Vincent. I want to hire you to work for my boss. Sorry, you should be able to tell that I can't work for anyone right now. That's not a problem, Vincent said with a smile. You just have to answer, accept or reject. Nothing else matters. I'm curious, Vincent said, smiling. How can I serve your boss now? If you accept, I'll be responsible for taking you out of the prison. If you reject, pretend I never came today. Since you can find me here, you should know who I offended. Do you still have the confidence to let me leave the prison? Of course I have my ways. Vincent took out a document with a smile and pushed it in front of Nance and Kira. If you agree, sign your name on this contract. Of course, you can also put your fingerprint on it. Nance and Kira picked up the contract and looked at it carefully. The style of the contract was rather strange. Many of the words were rather old too. Nance and Kira rubbed the contract with his fingers. It wasn't the regular rice paper. Are you sure this contract has legal effect? The contract required him to work for Vincent's boss for 30 years as an employee. Research some special projects for Vincent's boss and are not allowed to refuse. This was very irregular. Nance and Kira could not help but wonder if this contract was meaningful. Of course the boss has his ways to restrict you. Professor Nanston, you should understand that most of the time, the law can't restrict everything. For example, your enemy has money and power, so he can decide whether you live or die. Although these words were very hurtful, Nancy Kira understood that Vincent's words were actually very tactful. In front of the truly rich, his resistance was indeed futile. Then how do I know that he didn't hire you to tease me? I can't prove it. Vincent spread out his hands and said, But for you, there's no other choice now. Either you choose to spend the rest of your life in a dark prison, or you accept my kindness. Anyway, your situation can't get any worse, can it? I want to know, what does your boss want me to do? The contract did not state your boss's intentions. Of course, it's to use your professional knowledge to study marine biology. There are many experts in marine biology. I'm not the best. No, in some fields you're the best. At least that's what Homesius once said about you. Nancy Kira suddenly widened her eyes and looked at Vincent in shock. Homesius? Does he also work for your boss? Once, Vincent said indifferently. Regardless of our falling out, he and his wife destroyed my boss's research and ran away with the research data. Vincent added. But during our cooperation, Homesius said more than once that if it were you, you would have already achieved results. No matter how beautiful your words are, you can't hide the fact that I'm actually Homesius's substitute. No, not substitute, it's replace. Vincent corrected Nancy Kira's cognitive bias. Even before we fell out, he didn't research results that satisfied my boss. So even if Homesius didn't fall out with us, we had to terminate our cooperation. It doesn't say how I'll be treated. How much is your original income? My boss can give you 10 times the treatment. I don't just want money. Then what else do you want? Take revenge on that Chinese for me. Sorry, the boss won't go to war with him for you. If you think you have the ability, you can go yourself. Vincent refused directly. Your boss is only SOSO. He's actually afraid of that Chinese. You're not worth it for my boss to go to war with that Chinese. At least for now, you're far from worth it. What if I can prove my worth? Then we'll talk about it when you prove your worth. I can create unimaginable wealth for your boss, Nancy Kira said. When money reaches a certain level, there's no essential difference between $1 billion and $10 billion. My boss isn't so superficial to pursue wealth. Rich people are all so hypocritical. Back then, Nancy Kira had seen rich people for research funding, a lot of rich people. And rich people always said that when money reached a certain level, it was only a difference in numbers. In fact, these rich people were still pursuing even greater wealth with no regard for their own safety. Then what's your answer? Accept? Or refuse? I accept, Nancy Kira said. You also said that this is my last chance. Nancy Kira signed her name on the contract. Wise choice. Vincent smiled brightly. You won't regret your decision. Then when can I leave here? Nancy Kira asked. Tonight, Vincent said. Tonight? Are you guys that efficient? Can you get the police to release me tonight? Maybe not get the police to release you. Bail? My bail is very high. You You don't need to worry about that. You just need to be prepared. I'll come pick you up tonight. Chapter 2445. Nanston Kira waited expectantly. He hoped that the police would come to his cell and tell him, "You can come out now." But 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, he still couldn't wait for the news of his release. Damn it! Damn bastard, I knew it! I knew it was that damn Chinese who was playing with me. Nanston Kira suddenly became irritable. It was already 23 in the evening. Nanston Kira had already given up. By this time, the court had already closed. Boom! A loud sound came from behind Nanston Kira without warning. Nanston Kira was so scared that he curled up into a ball. Looking back, he found a big hole in the wall behind him. Vincent stood in the hole and looked at Nancy Kira in the cell from inside. "Professor Nanston, we should go." What's wrong with me? You want me to break out of prison? Hee, your bail is $13 million US. It's impossible for my boss to pay so much for you, and the money is bound to be confiscated. So you should hurry up now. The entire detention center was already ringing with alarms. Nanston Kira took a deep breath and finally took that step. "Where's your helper?" "Just me," Vincent said with a smile. "Are you crazy? You dare to break out of prison by yourself?" "I know what I'm doing," Vincent said disapprovingly. "Where does this lead?" "The sewers." In various movies and TV dramas, the sewers were always the golden passageway for prison breaks. However, Nanston Kira felt that Vincent was too reckless. He wasn't against illegal prison breaks. The key was whether he could be more meticulous. Blow up the wall of the cell he was in and escape through the sewers. Wasn't that too careless? Sure enough, after they entered the sewers, they heard footsteps behind them. The police in the detention center had obviously discovered that he had broken out of prison. This made Nanston Kira nervous. After all, no one liked to be caught right after breaking out of prison. His enemies would definitely find joy in his pain. "What should we do?" "Hurry up and think of a way. The police are coming from behind." Nancy pulled Vincent's arm nervously. He hoped that Vincent was actually joking with him. He hoped that Vincent actually had a very thorough plan. He actually had a lot of helpers. But to his disappointment, Vincent shook his head. "It doesn't matter. I can kill as many people as they come. This joke isn't funny." Vincent didn't care about Nancy Kira's thoughts. He just led the way. But the sounds of pursuit were getting closer and closer. Nancy also became more and more nervous. Nancy Kira looked back, and this glance almost made his soul leave his body. Searchlights were coming from the corner behind them. At this moment, Vincent suddenly stopped. Just then, Nancy Kira felt something wriggling in Vincent's arm. Nancy loosened his grip and saw a 2-meter-long sea snake crawling out of Vincent's sleeve. Frightened, Nancy watched the sea snake crawl towards the back. "Are you a magician?" Vincent glanced at Nancy Kira. "This isn't magic." Just then, a scream came from behind. "Sea snake! It's a sea snake! Damn it, kill it, ah!" Bang, bang. Because it was on the other side of the corner, Nancy Kira didn't know what was going on behind him. Could it be that a sea serpent was enough to make the pursuing police panic? Wasn't this too strange? He even used a gun. Was that necessary? "Let's go faster," Vincent suddenly said. He had a feeling that if he didn't go faster, big trouble would come. He knew who had sent Nancy Kira to prison. It was that terrifying human. If the police told him that Nancy Kira had escaped from prison, then he definitely wouldn't sit back and do nothing. Vincent wasn't confident that he could escape from Qinzhou again. Even his master said it. He didn't want to be enemies with that human. Just then, a rusty iron fence appeared in front of them. However, although the iron fence was rusty, it was still extremely strong. "Oh no, what do we do now? Do you want to go another way?" Nancy asked anxiously. Vincent stepped forward. He reached out with both hands and forcefully broke them. The 2 steel bars of the iron fence were directly broken. Nancy's mouth was wide open, her face full of astonishment. How? How did you do it? Do you want to stay here and investigate, or do you want to leave this dirty sewer as soon as possible? Fine. After Nancy Kira stepped out of the fence, Vincent went up and bent the 2 steel bars back. Nancy was speechless. Could a human bend such a thick steel bar? This probably required thousands of kilograms of strength, right? Or was it because the iron fence had already rusted? Could he bend the steel bar with his bare hands because the strength had decreased? However, Nancy didn't have time to think so much. They had already reached the end of the sewer. The exit of the sewer was a river. Vincent had already prepared a small boat here. Just like that, Nancy Kira successfully escaped from prison and boarded the small boat. The small boat flowed downstream and entered the sea through the estuary. Nancy didn't expect their prison break to be so easy. Where are we going now? We'll go wherever this boat takes us. It was understandable that they were in the river before. But at this time, they had already entered the sea. The direction of the waves was uncertain. Who knew where they would go? But what made him feel strange was that he and Vincent clearly didn't control the boat, but the boat still kept drifting towards the open sea. Logically speaking, a small wooden boat like theirs should be constantly wandering back and forth near the sea without any power or anyone operating it. However, the boat was always heading in one direction. It felt like something was carrying them towards the open sea. Suddenly, a wave appeared on the surface of the sea. The boat no longer moved forward, but instead retreated a distance. At this time, a black iron well rose from the original position of the boat. A submarine! Nancy Kira cried out in surprise. Come on, let's go in. You prepared this? It's too dangerous on the surface of the sea. Hiding below makes me feel a little safer. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 2446. I've already escaped here. The police can't chase me here. Maybe they're still wondering if I've already come ashore when I was in the river. It's not the police. It's danger from the sea. Even though this was Vincent's home ground, it was difficult for him to find confidence here. He didn't even want to recall that unbearable experience. It was definitely not a pleasant memory. On the other hand, Nancy Kira was blindly confident. In his opinion, Vincent's boss could even give him a submarine as an escape tool. One could imagine how powerful he was. Even the Coast Guard wouldn't be able to catch them. According to Nancy Kira's observation, this submarine should be a modified military submarine. This submarine wasn't one that had been retired in the 60s or 70s. It was a mainstream military submarine that was still in service. This was no longer a problem that could be solved with money. Without enough political influence, it was almost impossible to do this. Is the submarine's weapon system still there? Nancy Kira asked curiously. Yes. Why do you ask? Do me a favor and launch a torpedo at that Chinese man's house. Are you crazy? Vincent rolled his eyes with all his might. He couldn't wait to hide from Qin Zhao. How could he walk right into a trap? Moreover, he could roughly feel it. Qin Zhao wasn't very interested in him and his master. Ever since that escape on the cruise ship. He was still hiding in Los Angeles, but he didn't feel like he was being chased. It was probably because there was no essential conflict of interest between them. They were on opposite sides because they met the wrong person at the wrong place. The main reason for their conflict was still the incident itself. After that incident, the hostility between them faded. But this didn't mean they were friends. If he threw a torpedo at someone else's house, that would basically turn them from friends to irreconcilable enemies. The next time they met, it would be a fight to the death. Whether it was Vincent or his master, either of them wanted to fight to the death with a powerful enemy for the sake of a Nancy Kira. A Nancy Kira was not worth it for them to pay such a price. Qin Zhao received a call from David. Nancy Kira had escaped from prison. David suspected that it was a spiritualist. David even suspected that Qin Zhao had done it. He felt that Qin Zhao might want to lynch Nancy. Of course, Qin Zhao repeatedly promised that it wasn't him. David still accepted Qin Zhao's explanation. Of course, it was mainly from the traces left at the scene. It was far from Chen Zhao's personal style. Chen Zhao could also temporarily disguise his style. But Chen Zhao probably didn't need to. Moreover, Chen Zhao had asked the police to solve the problem. Then there was no need to take Nancy Kira out of custody again. Chen Zhao was depressed that Nancy Kira had run away. He had been absent-minded the entire day. He regretted it a little. If he had known earlier, he would have taken care of this matter himself. At that time, he would have just twisted off Nancy Kira's head and kicked it like a ball. Of course, there was nothing in this world that was completely satisfactory. Just as he was feeling depressed, he received a call from Wright. "Hey, darling, did you miss me? Chen, have you contacted Tiger recently?" "Tiger? What happened to him?" Chen Zhao frowned. He hadn't contacted Tiger recently. He hadn't even paid attention to Tiger. "You're really incompetent as a teacher. I've been busy recently. That can't cover up your negligence." "Fine, I was wrong. Tiger's recent actions have already brought a lot of negative news to our school. It's even a scandal." "That serious? I heard that you introduced him to his agent. You can go ask him yourself." "Fine, I'll contact you later." After hanging up, Chen Zhao called Dell. "Dell. Chen, you've been back in L.A. for so long and you haven't come to hang out with me. You're too much. Can't you come if I don't go?" "Fine. Are you asking me out now?" "I want to ask about Tiger." "You don't know?" "Know what?" "He already fired his agent from CAA." "When did that happen?" Chen Zhao asked, surprised. "I don't know at all." Chen Zhao was the one who'd introduced Tiger to CAA. Dell had been the middleman. After that, Tiger's performance became better and better. After that, Chen Zhao stopped paying attention to Tiger. He felt that Tiger didn't need too much attention anymore. "Just 2 months ago. So you don't know how he's doing?" "No, I know," Dell said. "After all, he's a former client of CAA. We still pay attention to him. How's he been recently? Was he the one who lost the match in the arena? Or something? He's as good as always in the arena." Hearing that, Chen Zhao was even more surprised. If he was as good as always, why would Wright say that Tiger had embarrassed the school? "What about other things? His current management company is SC. What's the problem?" "SC isn't good at business operations. They're good at controlling their clients." "How?" "Drugs, women. These are the most common methods." "He's been in contact with drugs?" Chen Zhao was instantly infuriated. "So far, he hasn't failed a urine test during his post-match medical examination. But recently the media has been reporting on the people he's been in contact with. They're all gang members. There have even been news of prostitutes in his mansion." In Chen Zhao's memory, Tiger seemed to have a girlfriend. They'd only had a meal together at the beginning of last year. Chen Zhao knew that in the sports world, people would often lose themselves because they became famous overnight. The most famous example in the boxing world was Tyson. He'd once dominated the heavyweight boxing world. After he became rich, he started spending and indulging without restraint. The result was, of course, being beaten to a pulp in the arena by someone who had once defeated him. He left the boxing world and became even more extravagant. In the end, he went bankrupt. Chen Zhao didn't want Tiger to be like that. But some things wouldn't happen just because Chen Zhao didn't want them to. Tiger was his student, but Chen Zhao was an adult himself. Plus, in Europe and America, everyone had their own private lives. Chen Zhao could give him a call, but he couldn't interfere with Tiger's personal choices. Their previous contract had also been terminated. At the time, Chen Zhao felt that he was rich enough. He didn't need to suck blood from Tiger anymore. Ford's contract was the same. So, Chen Zhao lost his last method to restrict Tiger. Chapter 2447. After thinking for a long time, Chen still decided to talk to Tiger. If this was in China, even neighbors would talk to you. But this wasn't China. "Hey, Tiger, do you have time? How about we talk?" Teacher? Tiger clearly didn't expect Chin to call him. Subconsciously, he was still afraid of Chin. Teacher, I'm competing overseas. I don't have time. Fine. Chen's eye twitched. Tiger's intention to evade and lie was too obvious. Tiger, do you remember what I said? Teacher. What did you say? I can take back what I can give. Thank you for the reminder, teacher. Then Tiger hung up. Chin could feel Tiger's resentment. Chin didn't plan to talk about life principles with Tiger. He picked up his phone and searched for news about Tiger. Although the news might not be true, most of the time, it could explain part of the problem. In Tiger's mansion, a bespectacled, middle-aged black man in a suit walked over. Tiger, who's calling? I saw your face suddenly change after you answered the phone. Bach. Tiger raised his head and glanced at his manager. My former teacher. Oh? He asked you for money? Bach knew the world too well. After a person became rich, there would often be some inexplicable people who would stick to him and ask for benefits. No, he doesn't want money, but he wants to take everything from me. Tiger's face was clouded. Oh? Who is he? He's the person who made me, Tiger said. I started my career under his guidance. He's really good. Tiger, you're the boxing champion, the first Grand Slam winner in the history of boxing. You're the strongest person in the world. No, you don't know him. He once beat a dozen people to death with his bare hands. Fear appeared on Tiger's face. Even now, he couldn't forget what had happened on the internet. More than 30 people had surrounded the two of them, but Chin had killed more than a dozen people and heavily injured them. To him, it was like a nightmare. Hearing Tiger's words, Bach couldn't help but frown. He scrutinized Tiger. Could Tiger do it? With the strength he had displayed in the arena, it would probably be very difficult for him to do so. The corners of Bahi's mouth curved upwards. Tiger, I have something good for you. Something good? What? Tiger turned and looked at Bach. He knew that Bach's hands were not clean. When his agent found out that he was in contact with Bach, he had warned him. However, compared to his former agent's style, Tiger clearly preferred Bach. It was not only because of Bach's request for a lower share, but also because of Bach's ability and needs. For example, in a previous match, his opponent was a boxer who was equally strong. At the time, Tiger had studied the opponent's match recordings several times. Even he wasn't confident that he could beat him. But no one knew what Bahi had done. His opponent was glaring at him with rage and hatred. However, he didn't retaliate despite being beaten. Although Bahi did not say it clearly to him, he could feel that Bahi must have used some means outside of the arena. Of course, winning that match so easily made Tiger forget about Bach's tricks. But that didn't mean Tiger trusted Bach completely. Especially when Bach offered something good. Tiger became wary. Bach chuckled and took out a small bottle of medicine. What's this? A stimulant? No, it's not a low-end medicine like stimulants. Bach shook his head. It's called the devil's medicine. It can greatly increase your strength. Not just temporarily, but permanently. Bach, I don't want to be banned. Haha. I can't detect it with my current methods. Can't detect it? Tiger raised an eyebrow and looked at Bach suspiciously. Bach nodded and said with certainty, Absolutely not. I'm your agent. How can I let you be banned? How much? Tiger was tempted. It's free, Bach said. Free? How is that possible? Tiger didn't believe that Bach would give him something like this without reservation. As long as you do me a small favor, I'll give it to you, Bach said with a smile. What favor? Help me fight a match, Bach said. You're my agent. Can't you arrange it? It's not a regular match. Underground boxing? Tiger asked in shock. Yes, it's an underground boxing match. Tiger was silent for a moment. He looked up at Bach. Are you sure this thing has no side effects? Of course. I won't joke around with the greatest client I've ever worked with in my career. Tiger thought about it. It was just as Bach said. If he was banned, his loss would be the greatest, but Bach's loss wouldn't be small either. When is the match? Tonight. Why the rush? Don't you want to try the effect of this medicine? It'll take effect today? The effect of this devil's medicine is more perfect than you think. Tiger took the devil's medicine and hesitated. But in the end, his desire won over his rationality. Inject or take it? Take it. Can I take it directly? Of course. Tiger twisted the cap and sniffed. There was no smell. After hesitating for a few more seconds, he drank the entire medicine. After the medicine entered his stomach, Tiger felt a burning sensation in his abdomen. The burning sensation was spreading to his limbs and bones. Drink! Tiger let out a low growl. Surprise flashed in Bach's eyes. He'd seen others use the devil's medicine before. The pain produced during use could almost be described as unbearable. But Tiger didn't seem to be in too much pain. He seemed to be able to endure it. Tiger's breathing became heavy. He even spat out white gas. His muscles swelled like balloons. The veins under his skin bulged. Tiger gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. It wasn't a good feeling. His bones cracked. Tiger roared and threw a punch at the wall behind him. Tiger's fist embedded into the concrete wall. When he retracted his fist, there was a bull-sized hole in the wall. Cracks spread around the hole. Chapter 2448. Tiger did not want to believe his eyes. He had punched a hole in the wall. The wall was made of concrete and steel. Not to mention fists. Even a hammer might not be able to penetrate it. But now, he could punch a hole in it. Was this the effect of the devil's potion? It was unbelievable. Tiger felt like he could beat anyone now. Bach was surprised too. He did not expect Tiger to be so compatible with the devil's potion. He also knew the effects of the devil's potion. At the moment, it wasn't an exaggeration to say that he could break an adult bear's neck if he fought it. Tiger looked at his fists. He had never felt so confident before. Even against Qinzhao, he had the courage to say no. What time is the match tonight? What? You can't wait any more? Bach was satisfied with Tiger's excitement. I feel like I can kill a lion. What an intoxicating power. Night fell. Tiger and Bach set off together, heading to the underground boxing arena. But as soon as the car drove out of the gate, a figure jumped out and blocked their way. Tiger and Bach were both shocked. They took a closer look. Wasn't the person blocking the car Tiger's previous opponent? Tiger remembered that the man was called Hinga. Syndicate was also black. He was taller than Tiger, but he was slightly more slender than Tiger. Bach got out of the car. Hinga, do you want to die? Bach, you said that if I lose to Tiger, you'll give me money. Hinga said directly. My daughter needs surgery, but you haven't received the money yet. Bach sneered at Hinga. I don't remember saying that. You fucking bastard, you lied to me? Furious, Hinga accused Bach. Fuck off, or I'll call the police. Bach looked at Hinga in disdain. I'm going to tell the media. Not only did you make me fight in an underground boxing match, but you also threatened me with my daughter's life. A cold glint flashed across Bach's eyes. It was not his first time making his client fix a match. In the past, people had tried to threaten him with this. But now, he was still standing here, safe and sound. As for the people who threatened him, they had all disappeared. No one has ever dared to threaten me. Do you know where the people who wanted to use these things to threaten me ended up? Bach's glasses flashed with a cold light. Syndicate was actually afraid as well. He had long heard of Bach's reputation in the circle. Notoriety is not enough to describe his badness. Just then, Tiger got off too. When Hinga saw Tiger, his eyes flashed with hatred. Tiger smiled. Bach, let me handle it. You! Bach was disappointed. How was Tiger going to deal with him? Tiger walked up to Hinga. I don't care what happened between you and Bach, but I'm willing to give you a chance. What opportunity? Let's have a fight. If you win, I'll ask Bach to give you the money. When? Where? Sin wasn't afraid of Tiger at all. He felt that Tiger was just a fake. Otherwise, his agent would not have looked for him that day and asked him to cooperate with the fake fight. Right here, Tiger said coolly. Tiger crooked his finger. If you can beat me, you can get the money. That's what you said? Yes, that's what I said. Tiger twisted his neck. Tiger! You still have a fight later. I know, Tiger said confidently. That's why I need to warm up. Hearing Tiger's words, Hinga was furious. I'm actually just a warm-up for him. He was looking down on him too much. Hinga had already gotten into position. Come on. Let me see where your confidence comes from. Tiger quickly stood in front of Hinga. Let's start. Zinga threw out a left uppercut with a heavy swing. Got it. Hinga was very confident in his attack. Tiger was too arrogant. He actually did not block at all. Indeed, Hinga's prediction was right. His left hook landed heavily on Tiger's chin. But Tiger did not move at all. Instead, it was Hinga. He felt like his fist had hit an iron wall. Too weak. You're too weak like this. Tiger shook his head. Hinga's expression changed. He hurriedly retreated into a defensive position. The feeling Tiger gave him now was completely different from last time. Last time, in the ring of an official match, he had been prepared to lose. But Tiger's attack, defense, strength, speed, and technique had not made him feel pressured at all. In the 7th round of the half-real, half-fake match, he purposely showed an opening and was KO'd by Tiger with one punch. But now, Tiger gave him the feeling that he was an insurmountable mountain. Tiger attacked. It was a devastating punch. It hit Hinga's arms in front of him first. Crack! In an instant, the bones in Syndicate's arms and hands were like broken pieces of wood. But Tiger did not stop. The terrifying power landed directly on Hinga's face. Syndicate's entire body flew a few meters away and fell to the ground, completely unconscious. Bach, are you going to kill his mom? Tiger asked, unconcerned. Bach was about to say, kill him. Suddenly, he saw light behind the flower bed across the road. Don't mess around. There are paparazzi, Bach said in a low voice. Let's go. He's lucky. Tiger spat and got into the car. The next day, almost all the media was reporting about the private fight between Hinga and Tiger at night. Hinga was still lying in the hospital, but he still claimed that Tiger and his manager had asked him to fake the fight. But no one believed him. Because a paparazzi had recorded the scene of the two of them fighting last night. Tiger was clearly much stronger than Hinga. They could not understand why Tiger would ask Hinga to fake the fight. So, even though Tiger had injured Hinga, more people were willing to support him and believe in him. On the other hand, Hinga had become the target of everyone's hatred. The media made him into a scoundrel and villain. Because he lost the fight, he blackmailed Tiger and used fake news as an excuse. Then, he was beaten to the ground by Tiger, which proved his point of view. Qin Zhao watched the news report. He picked up his phone and called West. West, help me investigate someone's identity. Oh, okay. President, who do you want to investigate? A man called Sinka, a heavyweight boxer. He's also the guy who made a lot of noise in the news today. Chapter 2449. Mr. Hinga, I'm representing Mr. Tiger. I'm sending you a lawyer's letter. Because you've spread inappropriate comments, my client has suffered great harm and financial loss. So, Mr. Tiger has filed a lawsuit and asked for $3 million. Tiger's lawyer said arrogantly. Tiger's lawyer said arrogantly. In his eyes, Hinga was a loser, a joke. Hinga had overestimated himself and fought Tiger. In the end, both in the ring and in terms of influence, he'd been defeated by Tiger's absolute strength. Bang! Suddenly, the door to the ward was pushed open. Both Hinga and Tiger's lawyer froze when they saw an Asian man walk in. Qin Zhao glanced at Tiger's lawyer and then at Hinga. He's your friend? No. Who are you? Hinga didn't understand the situation. Judging from how Qin Zhao had pushed the door open, he seemed to be here for trouble too. Just like this morning, when a fan of Tiger had rushed into the ward to insult him. Qin Zhao didn't answer Hinga's question immediately. Instead, he looked at Tiger's lawyer. You can scram now. Who do you think you are? Yellow-skinned monkey. Slap. Qin Zhao slapped Tiger's lawyer, knocking out 2 of his front teeth. I'm going to sue you. I'm going to jail. Tiger's lawyer was still roaring fearlessly. Just then, another voice came from the door. Ysef, are you going to sue my boss? Ysef looked up. When he saw Alex, he couldn't help but shiver. She was the queen of the largest law firm in California and the lawyer with the highest winning rate in America in the past decade. Of course, she was also the most expensive lawyer. With a 95% chance of winning, it could be said that it was a nightmare for a lawyer to face Alex in court. Moreover, Alex had the most professional team of lawyers. What frightened Witherspoon the most was what Alex had just said. She didn't call Qin Zhao a client or client. She called him boss. The two were completely different. Is there a way to revoke his lawyer's license? Qin Zhao asked calmly. As you wish, boss. Alex didn't seem to mind either. Give me some private time with Mr. Hinga. Not long after, the ward was cleared. Of course, when they asked Witherf to leave, they still asked for the hospital's security. Syndicate vaguely realized why he was transferred to this hospital. He even arranged a luxurious ward for him and arranged for a professional doctor to treat him. It was very likely that it was arranged by this Asian. Qin Zhao pulled over a chair and sat before Syndicate's bed. Your daughter is also in this hospital, and she has already found a matching heart. She can undergo surgery in 3 days, and the surgery fee has already been paid. The best heart transplant specialist in California will be in charge of this surgery. I can't guarantee that the surgery will be a success, but as long as you can think of a reasonable request that can improve the surgery, you can tell me. Qin Zhao said. The best heart transplant specialist in California will be responsible for this surgery. Hearing that, Syndicate knew that there was no free lunch in the world. Qin Zhao hadn't discussed this with him beforehand. But he couldn't refuse the offer. He, Tiger, and Bach were in a heated argument. Their ultimate goal was to raise money for his daughter's heart transplant. What do you need from me? Take a look at this contract. It was an investment contract. It was the one that Qin Zhao had signed with Ford and Tiger. However, this contract was more complete than the previous one. After all, Qin Zhao's legal team had helped draft it. At the same time, the terms were even harsher. If Syndicate broke the contract, he would either have to become a miner in Africa or sleep on the streets for the rest of his life. Where's the pen? Syndicate asked. Didn't you discuss the contract's content with me? I can't find a reason to refuse. My daughter's surgery costs $300,000, and then you have to pay for my treatment, rehabilitation, nutrition, and the cost of hiring a rehabilitation coach, fitness coach, and professional boxing coach. The total cost is even higher than my daughter's surgery. What's more, my attending doctor told me that my arm's bones were destroyed, and my arm's nerves were severely injured. That is to say, for a long time in the future, or even for the rest of my life, I won't be able to return to the ring with my hands, let alone return to the boxing ring. In your contract, as long as I haven't fully recovered, you have to pay me $20,000 a month. That is to say, even if I don't do anything, I can live a very comfortable life every month. I don't understand why you would refuse this contract. Qin Zhao tossed a pen to Syndicate. Syndicate picked it up with his trembling right hand. However, he couldn't even hold the pen steadily. You saw it too. Are you sure you want me to sign this contract now? Qin Zhao nodded. That's why I came. Syndicate took a deep breath. He suddenly hesitated. He still couldn't figure out Qin Zhao's identity. He couldn't understand Qin Zhao's intentions. What exactly did Qin Zhao want to do? In the end, Syndicate couldn't resist the temptation of the contract. What do you want to do? Destroy what I once created with my own hands, Qin Zhao said calmly. I don't know what you mean. A year ago, Tiger was in the same situation as you. His arm was injured. He almost lost everything: his dreams, his future, and his hope. Qin Zhao's tone was a bit emotional. I gave him the same contract. I gave him a chance to stand on the stage of his dreams again, but he disappointed me. I once told him that I can take back what I can give him with my own hands. Xian Jia abruptly looked up at Qin Zhao. He vaguely remembered that when Tiger debuted last year, he would always say something like his teacher in every interview after he won a match. Every interview was the same. Now, he suddenly understood something. But he also felt that Qin Zhao was too cruel to destroy the disciple he'd trained with his own hands. Syndicate didn't understand Qin Zhao. Now, Qin Zhao wasn't just disappointed in Tiger. He also hated him. Qin Zhao found Tiger's ex-girlfriend. They'd broken up long ago. Tiger, on the other hand, had given his ex-girlfriend severe physical and psychological trauma. Some of the damage was even hard to talk about. Qin Zhao vaguely remembered that when he'd first met Tiger and his ex-girlfriend, he'd sincerely wished them well. Now that he thought about it, it was so funny. Divine King of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 2450. Mr. Tiger. With earth covered his face. He'd just received a lecture from Alex. She'd also told him how rich her boss was. At the same time, she told him the terrifying consequences of becoming his enemy. At the same time, she'd helped Qin Zhao pass on a message. That's what he said. Tiger's expression was cold. There was even a hint of fear. Can I take back what I gave myself? Bach glanced at Tiger. Tiger, he's not as scary as you think. He's in the past now. No, Bach, you don't understand. He's really scary. He's the devil. Tiger's tone became urgent. Did you know that he and I were blocked in the parking lot? They asked me to fake a fight. Then, with a smile on his face, he punched the people who surrounded us to death and crippled them. Tiger's tone became urgent. Then he still looked at me with that smile and said in a gentle tone, "If you disappoint me one day, then I'll take back what I gave myself." Tiger looked up at Bach. I once swore that I'd never disappoint him. I'd never face him with that smile. You didn't do anything, Bach said. Plus, he doesn't have evidence, right? Tiger smiled bitterly at Bach. Do you think he's the kind of person who needs evidence? Bach's expression turned cold. Since he doesn't want to reason with us, we don't need to reason with him either. Don't worry, leave this to me. Bach, don't use extreme methods. You'll anger him. Tiger, you don't understand me or my company. Bach patted Tiger's shoulder. You can be a big star without worry. No one can threaten my client. The more Bach said this, the more worried Tiger was. Qin Zhao had never thought that the big boy would become a real bad guy. Qin Zhao's impression of Tiger was still that of a shy, introverted boy who was always passionate about the ring and thirsted for victory. This change was too sudden. Qin Zhao was still in a daze. West had helped him investigate a lot of information about Tiger. Hiring prostitutes were a personal problem. Qin Zhao could ignore it. There was also the emotional entanglement between him and his ex-girlfriend, which could only be said to be a personal issue. Even if he beat up his ex-girlfriend, Qin Zhao would at most call the police instead of getting involved himself. However, he couldn't accept that Qin Zhao had gotten some information from his ex-girlfriend. That was no longer just a matter of touching the bottom line of morality. If it were in China, it would be enough to be executed several times. As the saying goes, men become bad when they have money. Tiger was the best example. To put it bluntly, he had become arrogant after becoming famous. Moreover, it was the kind that drifted too far. Qin Zhao felt that it was already too much for rich people to reveal their identities and throw a stack of cash at ordinary people. However, he had clearly underestimated Tiger. Tiger was completely different from Ford and Everly. Rufford's career had its ups and downs. But after meeting Qin Zhao, his career skyrocketed. Coupled with the environment he grew up in and the stability of his family, Rutherford's mentality had always been good. Moreover, he often communicated with Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao didn't have much to teach him in terms of technique. However, Qin Zhao could still guide him in terms of training and nutrition. Perhaps Rufford also got arrogant sometimes, but he could control himself. Evely was different. Her family background had always been extraordinary. She had received elite education since she was young. Now, she was the most famous athlete in the sports world. It was just another way for her to succeed other than inheriting her family business. Thus, her mentality was the best. She also kept in touch with Qin Zhao. Tiger was different. In the past, he had felt inferior. Now, he was as arrogant as he was arrogant. After being repressed for a long time, once a person found an outlet, they would go crazy. It wasn't that poor kids couldn't become rich overnight. If only someone had been able to guide them back then. Tiger wouldn't have become like this. However proud Qin Zhao was of Tiger in the past, he hated him now. Right now, Qin Zhao's mentality was, I raised him, so I'll destroy him with my own hands. Moreover, Qin Zhao wanted to destroy him in all aspects. Don't talk to Qin Zhao. He was still a kid. Plus, he could still be saved. He just lacked guidance. A mistake was a mistake. He could make other mistakes and still have a chance to redeem himself. But some mistakes couldn't be undone. Tiger had committed 2 unforgivable crimes. One was drunk driving and killed a mother and daughter. Then, to avoid responsibility, he let someone else take the blame. The husband of the mother and daughter's family hanged himself half a month later. At least, the police concluded that it was suicide. But Qin Zhao didn't think so. Tiger had been in frequent contact with gangs for a while. Therefore, the media often saw this kind of news, and the territory of the gang he was associated with happened to be near the neighborhood where the man who hanged himself lived. The second crime was that he had violated a woman. That night, the woman and her family were all buried in a fire. The first crime was from West's investigation, and the second was from a few words from Tiger's ex-girlfriend. Qin Zhao had also been to the scene of the fire. At the same time, he'd gotten the report from the fire station. The report showed that someone had indeed set the fire on purpose. But there were no clues about the suspect. Qin Zhao wasn't a judge, so he never needed evidence. Most of the time, judges didn't pursue justice, but the law. But the original purpose of humans' creation of law was to uphold justice. In court, if a person was known to be guilty of a heinous crime, but there was no evidence to prove that he was guilty, could he not be sentenced? This was a philosophical question. Qin Zhao wasn't a philosopher. He couldn't explain whether he should uphold justice or the law. He only knew that he should do what he had to do. As the saying went, it was up to God to decide if you were guilty or not. Qin Zhao was only responsible for sending you to God. But one thing Qin Zhao was sure of was that Tiger couldn't see God. Just then, Qin Zhao received a call. It was from a stranger. Hello, is this Mr. Qin? Who is it? Qin Zhao didn't like strangers who pretended to be mysterious. They would instinctively make others hostile, like Qin Zhao. Chapter 2451. I'm Madeko Pavich. How may I help you? Mr. Chun, can you please stop being a busybody? It's for the good of your former disciple and for you and your family. You've investigated me, right? How much do you know about me? Ha! Madeko Pavich chuckled. Rich, very rich. What else? Seems like my investigation isn't comprehensive enough. There's still something I haven't found out. Madeko Pavich smiled, but he didn't take it to heart. But please understand that some power can't be compensated with money or the power behind you. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you can show me what power money can't compensate for. I hope you won't regret it. I'll say the same to you. Didi, after school, go home with your siblings. Qin Zhao informed Didi. Didila was the oldest of the kids and he was a steady person. Qin Zhao trusted him. Uncle, we've been at school for a few days. You're only concerned about our safety today? Don't tell me you've made some new enemies recently? Asked Didira speechlessly. That's the essence of the word. Which warrior is it? To Didi, anyone who dared to go against his uncle was definitely a warrior, especially someone who dared to threaten his family. Even the word, warrior, wasn't enough to describe their bravery. He hoped that there would be no war in heaven. After informing Didira, Chen Zhao called West. West, what are Helis and Jalanash doing these days? Helis just came out of the Tower of Trials. She seems to have made some progress on level 4. She seems to have a good chance of passing it, West said. Jalanash should still be in the city. She went shopping with Giselle. Where are they shopping? Beverly Street. Perfect. Tell her to go to Angel Beach. Someone might want to harm my family. I'm afraid that Phalai will be in danger. Also, tell Helis to go to Mountain Elementary and secretly protect my kids. Guild leader, who is it? West immediately lowered his voice. I don't know yet. There's a guy called Madeko Pavich. I don't know his background yet. There are still a few kids at home. I can't leave, so I can only ask Jalanash and Hallis to protect them. Guild leader, if we encounter an ambush, I can kill all the enemies, right? Of course, Chen Zhao replied. Okay, I know what to do. Hallis hung up the phone. This basically gave Helith the power to fire as many times as she wanted. As long as he was judged as an enemy, she had the right to execute him. Normally, Chen Zhao wouldn't give him such authority. One reason was that Helith was even more murderous than Chen Zhao. On the other hand, some people didn't necessarily deserve to die. However, this was a special time. Because someone claimed to be threatening his family. At this time, there was no time to distinguish between death and death. As for Jalanash on the other side, Chen Zhao didn't even need to say anything. If a normal person forced Jalanash to attack Nash, Chen Zhao wouldn't even need to say anything. In that case, the result would be no different from firing limitlessly. If Jalanash's elemental magic hit an ordinary person, it would be like being hit by a missile. Kids, do you remember me? Sister Helith. Didila was the first to recognize her. Helith forced a strange smile with difficulty. Not bad, you still remember me. But Illich, Binance, Ferentia, and Kilo all remembered Helith too. He remembered this little sister who was full of Gothic style. Helith's style was too obvious and left a deep impression on them. But Hallie's was also the type that came with a lightning rod. Not to mention children, even adults would automatically keep a respectful distance from her. Even when facing Chen Zhao's kids, Helith only smiled perfunctorily. Your uncle told me to take you home, Helith said. Let's go. Get in my car. The kids looked at Helith's car. It was an expensive Lincoln Navigator. But what really caught their attention wasn't the car's price. Instead, it was the super personalized paint on the car. There were 7 pictures. They were the 7 disasters: pain, disease, suffering, torture, plague, death, and despair. Each picture was fully integrated with the elements of death and terror. In particular, the paint used in some places was very special. It was a fluorescent coating. For example, the picture on the back of the car was the plague sermon. If someone shone a beam at Helitha's car from the back, they would definitely see a strange scene. Hi, Phalai. Jalanash came to the Coastal Rescue Team's headquarters. Jalanash, why are you here? Phalai saw Giselle behind Jalanash and greeted her as well. Because she often went to the supernatural organization, she was basically familiar with the people there. The president asked me to protect you. Huh? Is that necessary? I can't help it. As a spiritualist family, I often get involved in some unnecessary trouble with my family. Jalanash shrugged helplessly. There were rules in the spiritual world that people might not be able to protect their family. But sometimes it wasn't that people wanted things to escalate. It was just that things got out of control. Jolene, Nash, and Giselle sent Phalai home safe and sound. As soon as they got out of the car, Haris arrived in her cool and strange car. When they arrived, Chen Zhao had already prepared a scrumptious dinner in the yard. Everyone, including Giselle, was asked to stay for dinner. Of course, Qin Zhao didn't just ask them to stay for dinner. In the next few days, they would probably stay with Fei Lai to work and escort Qin Zhao's children to and from school. "Chen, what's going on?" Fei Lai asked at the dining table. Qin Zhao rarely arranged for people from the supernatural organization to protect his family. Qin Zhao told her about Tiger. "Tiger? How did that kid become like this?" "President, if you need, I can send that guy to God for you." Qin Zhao glanced at Helith. "No need. That's not my plan." It was very easy to destroy a person physically. For Qin Zhao, Helith, and Jalanash, it wasn't difficult at all. A spell could solve it. But Qin Zhao didn't just want to kill Tiger. It wasn't simply justice. It was revenge. Chapter 2452. A passenger plane landed at Los Angeles Airport. A dozen strangely dressed passengers walked out of the exit. They looked like they walked out of the Hogwarts Academy in the movie, Harry Potter. Of course, the way others looked at them was as if they were cosplaying as Hogwarts magicians. They were already used to this kind of look. So they looked calm, and they responded to other people's requests to take photos with them. When they walked out of the exit, someone went up to them. "Hamson. Mr. Mediko Pavich, may the immortal king bless you." Among the group of Hogwarts mages, an old man looked at the person who greeted them. "It's a pleasure for you to visit." Mediko Pavich looked at Hamson Della. They were all real mages. Although they did not come from Hogwarts Academy. But magic existed in this world. All kinds of unimaginable magic shocked Mediko Pavich when he first came into contact with them. It was then that Mediko Pavich came into contact with the group of mages from England and got to know them. They came from an organization called the Immortal Crown, an extremely ancient organization. But although they were ancient, they were very poor. And because of the lack of funds, their members dwindled. Until Mediko Pavich provided them with funds. Their precarious life was finally alleviated. Of course, Mediko Pavich did not help them unconditionally. When Mediko Pavich needed help, they would also need to help him solve any problems he faced. The group of mages, who had long been afraid of poverty, did not care about the rules of the spiritual world. Perhaps they did not realize that they had been controlled by Mediko Pavich from the very beginning. Now, they even relied on the money provided by Mediko Pavich for their daily necessities. Of course, even if they realized this problem, they did not want to go back to the past. When Mediko Pavich first came into contact with them, they lived in the depths of a forest that was rarely visited by humans. There were 52 of them when Mediko Pavich unwittingly broke into their hideout. They were psychics who hid in the mountains to avoid World War II in the last century. Most of them were second or third generation, and a few were fourth or fifth generation. Initially, there were a few hundred spiritualists. However, after decades of reproduction, not only did they not grow stronger, but their numbers were also decreasing. It was mainly because they had too little contact with the outside world. Their daily necessities were basically grown and bred by themselves. Their only means of transportation was an old car from the 1930s. They had not been in contact with the outside world for decades. Their knowledge was seriously out of touch with the outside world. They had almost returned to primitive society before Mediko Pavich had entered the forest in which they lived. Due to the lack of living resources and poor medical standards, they could only rely on magic to cure all of their illnesses. However, most of the time, magic could not cure all diseases. Take appendicitis, for example. In the outside world, a small surgery could solve the problem. But there, it was a fatal disease. They had no idea what was going on outside. They still thought that the outside world was still in an era of war. This kind of understanding was not only out of touch, but also a lack of knowledge. This caused them to be unable to survive alone even after Mediko Pavich brought them out of the forest. Of course, another reason was that Mediko Pavich deliberately made them think so in order to better control these magicians. All of their knowledge had already fallen behind decades of time. After all, the speed of development, and changes in the past few decades were much greater than the development of human civilization in the past thousands of years. Especially since almost all of the first generation had passed away. Now, there were not many of the second generation left. The incomplete inheritance of knowledge caused them to have an incomplete understanding of the outside world. As a result, they developed a sense of dependence on Medico Pavich. Medico Pavich easily controlled them. At least, most of the members of the Immortal Crown had become his servants. The older second and third generation were no longer willing to step out of their former seclusion. The fourth and fifth generation were even younger and more willing to see the outside world. Hamson was the only second generation that came out with Medico Pavich. However, he was already very old. He was already 85 years old. In fact, he was already born before his parents lived in seclusion. Compared to the others, he understood the outside world better. Of course, he yearned for the outside world more than the others. So, he could be considered a first generation. His magic power was the strongest among the other magicians. Hamson knew that Medico Pavich was using them. However, he did not care. Compared to the lack of resources and monotonous life in the seclusion, the outside world was much more interesting. There was also the guarantee of a stable life. Moreover, the tasks that Medico Pavich gave them were very simple. "You guys are really eye-catching," Medico Pavich said with a smile. "Although the outside world is much more interesting than the seclusion, I'm still more used to the robe of order." The magicians called their robes the robe of order. The robe of order was also a magic item that could provide them with magic power. Of course, for Hamson and the others who had lived in seclusion for a long time, the robe of order gave them a sense of superiority. Perhaps due to the influence of the movies, when they appeared in public wearing the robe of order, they felt proud and honored. The fanaticism and adoration of ordinary people made them feel honored and proud. "What do you want us to do this time?" Hamson asked. "Mr. Medico, please give us some challenging tasks," a young magician of the fourth generation said with a somewhat arrogant tone. "Yes, I hope this task can be a little difficult. At least when we travel, we will feel a little bit of pressure. Although I want to give you some challenging tasks, you guys are born extraordinary. Perhaps only saving the world will make you feel pressured." "Haha. Can you find us a task to save the world?" "Me too. But first, we need to live a better life before saving the world." Chapter 2453. Medico Pavich led everyone into the car. Then he took out a stack of photos. "These are your goals. Bring them all to me. There are a few kids here," Hamson said. "After this mission, I'll provide you with at least a year's worth of funds. You should also have your own headquarters in the outside world. Don't you think so, Hamson?" Hamson thought for a while and nodded. "You're right." As for the question that made him hesitate before, after Medico Pavich stated his conditions, it wasn't that important anymore. "Rest for the night. Tomorrow, I'll give you more information about your goals. Finish the mission as soon as possible. Then you can have fun here. I've already prepared many projects for you. Mr. Chen, do you really have a way to help my arms recover their strength?" Sinja asked hesitantly. Every time he asked his doctor when he would treat his arms, the doctor would reply that Chen Zhao would be in charge of his arms. All the attending doctors told him that Chen Zhao was in charge of treating his hands. They weren't in charge of treatment or examination. It seemed that the doctors in the hospital had blind confidence in Chen Zhao. He'd also learned from the doctors that Chen Zhao wasn't just rich. Not only was Chen Zhao rich, but he was also a doctor with incredible medical skills. Sinja didn't really want to believe it. Doctors could become rich, but they probably couldn't become very rich. At least, this was his understanding. But then he thought of the contract Chen Zhao had given him. If Chen Zhao couldn't treat his arms, then the contract might cause Chen Zhao's investment to turn into a loss. Thus, Sinja was more willing to believe that Chen Zhao really had a way. Of course, hope was one thing, but reality was another. He was an athlete. He knew where the current bottleneck of medical technology was. He'd seen too many people in the same profession retire from the stage due to various injuries. For example, his current injuries. His arms felt like they'd been cut off. The neural networks in his arms had been cut open. There was technology to reattach arms, but it was similar to grafting or reconnecting a cable after it was cut off. If the cable was pulled with enough force, the reconnection point would definitely be the point where the cable was reconnected. The connection of the neural network was actually a regrowth, not a connection of the original neural network. This was also the reason why the arm and palm could not be as nimble as before even after the arm was reattached, even after rehabilitation training. There was also the fracture and reconnection of the bones, which was also unable to withstand the initial force. Because the crack had always been there, the nerve structure in the bones could not be completely repaired. Just because two pieces of iron were glued together didn't mean that they could become one. At least from a mechanical point of view, two pieces of iron were always two units of force, not one. Therefore, Syndicate had always been skeptical about whether Chen Zhao could cure him. Chen Zhao looked at the report in his hand. He already had a clear plan for Syndicate's treatment. He was no stranger to this. Tiger had suffered the same injury back then. The two were almost exactly the same. Physical healing methods and the perfect potion. In terms of physical treatment, it referred to surgery. "I'll arrange surgery for you tonight," Chen Zhao said. Of course, if possible, he didn't want to operate at night either. But the hospital's operating theaters were full. Usually, it had to be arranged at least a week in advance before it could be arranged. Chen Zhao's request to use the operating theater was too sudden. Chen Zhao had a good relationship with the director and the major shareholders. But he couldn't delay the surgery of the other people he'd arranged. Therefore, it was arranged at night. This time could be squeezed out. Without this relationship, it would be difficult to arrange. "How much can my hands recover?" "According to my plan, of course in the best condition. But when it comes to surgeries, no one can guarantee anything." Chen Zhao was confident, but it was too unrealistic. Therefore, Chen Zhao wouldn't give any promises. After arranging the things before and after surgery for Syndicate, Chen Zhao went to rest on a chair outside. Even a doctor wouldn't like the smell in the hospital. Especially since he hadn't worked in the hospital for a long time, the chemical smell in the corridor stimulated Chen Zhao's sense of smell. Sometimes, having a sharp sense of smell was a burden. Just like animals, Chen Zhao had a new understanding of it. Since the evolution in the barren land, Chen Zhao's sense of smell had improved a lot. It still couldn't reach the super sense of smell of cats and dogs. But it still gave Chen Zhao a certain amount of trouble. If it was a normal smell, it would be fine. However, some smells were pungent. The pungent effect was also magnified by hundreds of times. For example, the smell in the hospital. Chen Zhao felt like he was soaking in a bathtub filled with medicine. Also, cats and dogs, for example, knew how to distinguish and block this kind of smell. But Chen Zhao didn't know. He couldn't block this sense of smell. Of course, while Chen Zhao couldn't block his sense of smell, his tolerance was stronger. He wasn't like cats and dogs, whose sense of smell would collapse after being sprayed with perfume. At most, Chen Zhao would feel nauseous. Plus, the pungent smell could be blocked. Breathing fresh air outside would make him feel happy. Of course, the happiest thing was that two people had come to relieve his pressure. The two people had come to relieve his pressure. Two young people wearing magic robes appeared before Chen Zhao. It was as if they were afraid that others wouldn't know who they were. In his hand was a wizard's magic staff, like those in the Harry Potter movies. "Sir, come with us." Chen Zhao raised his head and looked at the two young people. This pair of man and woman seemed to be a perfect match. "What's your name?" "I'm the Immortal Crown, Sark." "Arsini," the young woman said. Chen Zhao yawned. "Sit with me for a while." "Sir, we don't have time to waste with you." "You better." Arsini pointed her staff at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao reached out and snapped Arsenal's wand in an instant. "You!" Arsini stared at her staff in shock. "Damn!" Sark suddenly pointed the staff at Chen Zhao. Chapter 2454. Shape-shifting! Sark cast shape-shifting on Qin Zhao. Shape-shifting could be used on oneself, or on others. Shape-shifting on others was very advanced, because one's own magic wouldn't resist oneself. But when used on others, there would be resistance. Even if one used it on a normal person, there was a high chance of resistance. As for using it on Qin Zhao's magic resistance had almost broken through the sky. His current magic resistance wasn't absolutely immune to magic. Basically, even an advanced spell wouldn't have any effect on him. Before Sark's magic could land on Qin Zhao, it had already dissipated into nothingness. Qin Zhao knew what was going on, but Sark didn't. Although he used shape-shifting, there was a certain chance of resistance. But he thought that his shape-shifting skill was almost perfect. Qin Zhao's resistance was just a coincidence, a result of luck. If a regular spiritualist mastered shape-shifting and cast it on a normal person, there was a 50% chance of resistance. But if it was Sark, he knew some tricks of shape-shifting. Thus, his shape-shifting had a 90% success rate on normal people. Just now, Qin Zhao had resisted shape-shifting because Sark had stepped on his shit. He felt that Qin Zhao wouldn't be so lucky the second time. If Qin Zhao knew what Sark was thinking, or if Sark himself had studied probability, he definitely wouldn't agree with Sark's opinion. It was like flipping heads and tails of a coin. In terms of probability, if you flipped heads the first time, it didn't mean that you would flip tails the second time. The probability of flipping heads the second time was still 50%. Shape-shifting! Qin Zhao still wasn't moved. You missed again? Again, shape-shifting! 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 Suddenly, Qin Zhao stood up and covered Sark's mouth with one hand. Shoo! Sit down, sit with me for a while, or I'll break your jaw. Qin Zhao looked at Sark. Do you understand me? If you do, I'll let go. Sark nodded. But the moment Qin Zhao let go, Sark suddenly pointed at Qin Zhao. Blind! Pooh! Qin Zhao punched Sark's stomach. Sark was already kneeling on the ground, his body spasming slightly. Then, Qin Zhao looked at Arsenal. Arsenal was too scared to move. These two were pure rookies. This was Qin Zhao's impression of them. Let's not talk about their strength first. At the very least, their reactions were too abnormal. Qin Zhao looked at the two. Sit down, or I'll send you to the ward of this hospital. Both of them sat down obediently. Were you sent by Madok Pavich? The two of them remained silent. They seemed to think that this could negate the question. All right, I'll take that as a silent agreement. Do you know what a police officer's favorite way to interrogate a criminal is? Qin Zhao asked calmly. The two still didn't speak, but Qin Zhao chattered on. The police's favorite way of interrogation is to face two criminals, because for every question, if one of the criminals answers first, then his punishment will be reduced. In contrast, the second criminal's punishment will be increased accordingly. Qin Zhao looked at the two magicians who were sitting by his side obediently. He put his hands on their shoulders. So, next time when you answer my question, I hope you can be the first to answer. Sark and Arsenal lowered their heads, but they secretly exchanged glances. Clearly, they weren't going to cooperate with Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao suddenly increased the strength of his hands. He grabbed their collarbones and pulled. Crack! With their screams, their collarbones were dislocated at the same time. Their left and right shoulders collapsed at the same time. You can refuse, but trust me. I'll make all your bones leave their original positions. Other than you, do you have any other companions? Qin Zhao asked. Crack! The two screamed again. There are 206 bones in a human body. This means that you can experience 206 dislocations. Sark and Arsenal's faces paled. They hadn't experienced much pain. They didn't know how to face pain. I'll ask again. Do you have any other companions? Yes. This time, it was Arsenal who answered. Good, Qin Zhao said, satisfied. This is a good start. Arsenal! Sark screamed even more painfully than before. This time, Qin Zhao crushed Sark's bones. Worse punishment. How many of you are there? 18. This time, Shaq's team leader replied. Sark's betrayal was even more justified. Arsenal was the one who betrayed them first. They were two immature kids. This was what Qinzhao had learned from them. Basically, in less than 10 questions, he had already figured out the color of their underwear today. West, come over to my side and bring 2 people back. Didn't you say that you'd let us go if we answered your questions? If you didn't force me to attack, I would have let you go, but you forced me to use violence. You lost your last chance. From the moment they'd appeared before Qinzhao, he hadn't planned on letting them go. Only they'd naively believed Qinzhao's words. They'd thought that Qinzhao had really planned on letting them go. What a joke. These two were real information. With West in charge, he would definitely be able to obtain more valuable information. Why let them go now? It wouldn't be easy to find someone so easy to deal with. When they were sent to West's car, they wanted to resist again. But now, they didn't even have the strength to lift their wands. Qinzhao acted as if he'd done something insignificant. Qinzhao had also lowered Madik Pavich's strength. He'd thought that Madik Pavich was a person from the supernatural world. To his disappointment, Madik Pavich was just a normal person. His personal development was also combined with Sark's and Arsenal's testimonies. It was obvious that he'd only developed after encountering the people from the Immortal Crown and through their supernatural power. Every time he encountered a problem he couldn't solve, he'd ask the Immortal Crown for help. The Immortal Crown clearly relied on Madik Pavich's funds. The Immortal Crown had been established after spiritualists who'd been living in seclusion came out. Their foundation was too shallow. One could even say that they had no foundation at all. They weren't like those more successful organizations who'd found a suitable direction after adapting for a long time. Secondly, the Immortal Crown's strength. They actually had about the same number of members as the supernatural organization. But their individual strength was a mystery. Even Qinzhao couldn't tell what Arsenal and Sark meant by powerful. Chapter 2455. Although Sark and Arsenal were very weak, they were still very powerful. To the higher-ups of the Crown of Immortality, they described them as terrifyingly powerful. It was said that those powerful magicians had been cultivating non-stop for decades. He didn't have any contact with the outside world, so his daily routine was either cultivation or cultivation. Because of this, Qinzhao couldn't judge how powerful the Crown of Immortality was. So, he told West to be careful. Hello, Jalanash, it's me. Nar. Jalanash was sunbathing right now. She'd been with Phalai for the past 2 days. However, the past 2 days had been calm and peaceful. Nothing had happened. When Jolene and Nash had nothing to do, they would play on the shore or help Phalai out a little. If she met someone in trouble at sea, she would secretly use water magic to save them. Of course, she was still not used to the current pace of life. After all, she preferred to practice at the headquarters in the Tower of Trials. Although this kind of daily rhythm was very relaxing, but she couldn't be motivated. Jalanash was still surprised to receive a call from her sister. Nar, what's up? Can I call you if there's nothing? If there's nothing, I'm hanging up, Jalanash said without hesitation. 2 years ago, she might have believed Nar's call. But in the past 2 years, she'd been on missions half the time. Many of the quests weren't straightforward expeditions that could be completed by simply A+1. In fact, many missions required Jalanash to work her brain and think. As time went by, Jalanash gained more experience. She couldn't say she was very experienced, but at least she could hear some suspicions when talking to her sisters. No, I'll tell you, Nar said quickly, sounding a bit depressed. Tell me, what's up? Nar and Jalanash were sisters from the same clan. When they were young, they were like 2 big devils in the clan. Basically, wherever he talked about it, the chickens would fly and the eggs would be broken. So, they were naturally close. But they hadn't contacted each other in the past 2 years. It wasn't because they weren't close. It was because Nar had become the focus of the clan and had been cultivating in seclusion. That was why they never contacted each other. Unlike Nar, Jallanash's talent was mediocre in the clan. That was why Jallanash left the clan as soon as she came of age. The elders in the clan did not object to her going out. After all, even if Jallanash didn't leave on her own, she would probably be chased out by the elders of the clan soon. On the surface, it was said that he was going out to gain experience, but in reality, the underlying meaning was that he did not want to keep idle people. When Jallanash received Nar's call, her first reaction was that Nar had come out of seclusion. However, from her tone, it seemed like there was something else. "Jocelyn Nash, I miss you, so I decided to come and play with you." "There's nothing fun here," Jallanash replied lazily. "No, I know you're in Los Angeles. Everything is fun there," Nar said firmly. "LA is fun, but do you have money?" Jallanash went straight to the heart of the matter. "You've been out for 3 or 4 years. You should have some money, right?" He must have saved up a lot of money. "My money isn't for you to squander." Jallanash had been planning her own house recently. She had saved up quite a bit in the last 6 months. She saved at least half of her salary every month. She had also become a little miser. Plus, while her salary was high and she was of the highest class in the supernatural organization, her expenses were also high. However, her expenses were also very high. Although the association would provide some of the magic materials needed for training, there were still many that she had to collect herself. Moreover, as her strength increased, the expenses she needed to spend would also increase. Nar was the opposite of her because his family was much better than Jallanash's. That was why she had no concept of money since she was young. Did Uncle Owens come too? The Uncle Owens that Jallanash mentioned was Nar's father. "No, I don't want to talk about him." "You fought with Uncle Owens?" "I ran away from home. If he doesn't take me in, then I'll really be homeless." Jallanash couldn't help but worry. She wasn't worried that Nar would really be homeless. She was worried that there was no one around her. Who knew what she would do? "Nar, where are you now?" "Guess." Suddenly, Jallanash felt a familiar magic wave around her. Jallanash bounced up from the beach chair and looked behind her. "Hi, Jallanash." Jallanash finally found Nar. Nar was much shorter than Jallanash. She looked less than 160 centimeters. She looked like an underage girl with a baby face. In fact, she was the same age as Jallanash. She just had a different birthday. "Nar, how did you know I was here?" Jallanash looked at Nar, who was bouncing over. "Because we're sisters. We can communicate telepathically," Nar said proudly. Jallanash didn't believe her. "You know detection spells?" Jallanash asked, looking surprised. Because all of her race practiced elemental magic. It wasn't that there were no other types of magic, but they were at least very rare. On the other hand, detection magic was a more advanced type of magic. She doubted that Nar would learn this kind of magic. Or would her race let her waste time on other types of magic? "No, guess again." "I can't." Jallanash wasn't interested in guessing anymore. "I've activated the bloodline," Nar said proudly. Nar said proudly. "Now, as long as I want to, I can find the location of everyone who has the blood of our race flowing in their veins." "Huh! You've really activated it? Does our race really have such an ability?" Jallanash knew about it. It was called kindred inheritance in the race. But she doubted if such an ability really existed. In fact, it wasn't just her. Most people in the race doubted if such an ability really existed. "Yes, I'm the only person in the past 300 years who has awakened the kindred inheritance ability." "Oh, that's nothing to be proud of. After all, this ability can't increase one's strength." "Who said it can't? My magic power is more than 10 times stronger than before. It's easier for me to communicate with the elements. I only need half of my magic power to release a spell of the same level." "Oh, that's not bad." "Not bad? In your words, it's not bad?" Nar said loudly. "I'm at least in the top 10 in the race." My dad said that I can become the most powerful elemental mage in the race in 10 years. Chapter 2456. Jalanash wasn't the little girl from 10 years ago who would argue with Nair endlessly. She only laughed at Nair's arrogance. Nor did Nair continue to discuss the issue with Jolene and Nash. Is there a shopping street here? Yes, it's over there. I'm not talking about the ordinary ones. I'm talking about the high-end ones. If you want to go to Beverly Hills, I can find you a guide. Come with me and pay for me, Wang Yao said. Jalanash rolled her eyes. I'm on a mission. Mission? Now? You. Nar looked at Jalanash, who was only wearing a swimsuit, shorts, and a sun hat. Was she on a mission? What mission are you on? Protector, Jalanash said. It's okay. It's okay to go away for a while. I can just reject this mission. Am I not as important as a mission? Nair shook Jalanash's hand. Jalanash glanced at Nair. She was considering if she should tell her the truth. In Jalanash's heart, this childhood playmate was indeed a good sister. But she had to give up the mission just to shop with her. This was definitely impossible. If you stay in Los Angeles long enough, after I complete this mission, I can apply for a few days off to play with you in Los Angeles or the surrounding cities for a few days. But I can't just give up my current mission. Jalanash, you don't love me anymore. Nair hugged Jalanash, acting like a spoiled child. Don't do that. I need to focus on the mission. Fine. Who's your client? Not my client. My boss's wife. Is she a spiritualist? No, she's a regular person. So troublesome. How about I kill your boss and you'll be free? This joke isn't funny at all. Jalanash knew that Nair was joking. But she couldn't laugh at all. If Qin Zhao heard this, he would probably die. If Qin Zhao heard this, he'd slap Nair onto the wall. Although he hadn't seen Nair for a few years, her personality was still the same as a few years ago. Perhaps the days of closed-door training were too harsh. As a result, after Nair came to Los Angeles, he became even more self-indulgent. Nar, don't casually use magic in Los Angeles, especially on ordinary people. It's very dangerous here. What kind of danger is there in this magical desert? Nair said indifferently. If you continue to have this kind of attitude, then I can only tie you up and throw you into the clan. All right. Nair had compromised, but she didn't believe that Jalanash could kidnap her. She was just worried that if she pissed off Jolene Nash, she wouldn't be able to play with her. However, she was still stubborn and unruly in her bones. But Jalanash still arranged for Nar to go shopping. Nall said that he only wanted to go to Beverly Hills, but when he went to this ordinary commercial street, he still couldn't help but linger. After all, even if this was just an ordinary commercial street, it was still much more lively than the clan's gathering place. However, Nair had spent more than $2,000 in one afternoon, which still made Jalanash's heart ache. Even if she went shopping in Beverly Hills, she might not even spend $2,000 in a day. When Nair came back, she was already carrying more than 20 shopping bags. Women had a natural obsession with shopping. Jalanash, look at what I bought. Look at this pair of earrings. It's only $50. It's so worth it. Jalanash looked at the exquisite box that Nair took out. It was a pair of silver earrings. Most of the time, such silver jewelry wouldn't cost more than $20. This made Jalanash feel that she had to send her home as soon as possible. Just then, Fei Lai walked over. Fei Lai had already changed back into her own clothes. Jalanash, is she your friend? Fei Lai, are you off work? Jalanash looked at Fei Lai and then at Nair. She's my sister, Nair. She just left home. This pair of earrings is so beautiful. Which store did you buy it from? At this moment, Fei Lai displayed her high EQ. You think it's beautiful too, don't you? Nair immediately liked Fei Lai. She felt that her beauty sense had been recognized. To her, this was the greatest affirmation. Of course, it's very beautiful. How about we go shopping? I want a pair of earrings too. Jalanash wasn't stupid. Feilai's attitude clearly showed that she wanted to build a good relationship with Nair. Otherwise, why would she want to buy such jewelry? Feilai wasn't allowed to wear jewelry during work hours. Moreover, her jewelry was basically all high-end goods. Even if she went to events with Qin Zhao, she would only wear jewelry that cost tens of thousands of dollars or more. Feilai and Nair looked like mother and daughter. It wasn't because of their age or appearance difference. It was because of the difference in their intelligence. Because she was shopping, Feilai missed dinner time. However, Feilai had already called Qin Zhao. The three girls had a lot of fun outside. Then, Jalanash sent Feilai to her house and took Nair back to her place. Wow, Jalanash, is this your house? When did you buy it? It's so beautiful. I rented it, not bought it. Jalanash rolled her eyes. Such a luxurious house must be very expensive, right? Jalanash covered her face. I'll prepare daily necessities for you. When they were at Mingwa Villa, Nair had also made a big fuss as if he hadn't seen the world. Now that he saw his house, he also made a big fuss. Nair, your house is so many times bigger than mine. Do you have to be like this? I don't want to talk about that rundown house. I feel like I'm moldy after living there for so long. Actually, Nair's house was far from rundown. It was a manner that wasn't inferior to Mingwa Villa. Of course, Nair's main criticism was that the style couldn't keep up with the times. Most of the decorations were designed and built in the early 19th century. Girls like Nair, of course, preferred modern-style interior decorations. Jalanash was similar. Perhaps influenced by Qin Zhao's two manners, Jalanash's taste was more modern. This villa was rented by her, but her plan was to buy a villa that belonged to her. Or she could buy a piece of land and build her own house like Qin Zhao. Chapter 2457. Jalanash actually had a very clear plan for her life. In terms of personal ability, she'd always set Qin Zhao as her goal and tried her best to catch up. Even though Qin Zhao gave her despair, she wasn't discouraged. However, she was not discouraged because of this. After all, the process of catching up was actually very interesting. Her path in terms of personal ability was basically very clear. There was also her own financial management. Jalanash even went to Alex for advice. Alex couldn't understand Jalanash either. Jalanash had a high income, but she didn't have a stable job. That kind of income was obviously not a regular income. She got close to $100,000 every month. This was the income of a top-notch lawyer. But Jalanash clearly wasn't a lawyer. Alex even suspected that Jalanash was a high-class prostitute. But when she remembered that Qin Zhao had introduced her, she dispelled the thought. Alex drew up a property plan for Jalanash. However, Jalanash's loan was a bit troublesome. She had a high income, but she didn't have any proof of work. To the bank's appraiser, such people were probably involved in some illegal activities and could lose their income at any time. But this was a small problem. Qin Zhao was happy to lend Jalanash the money. You can stay here for the time being, but I have a rule. You can't use magic in my house. No magic at all. Okay, got it. Hey Chen, I've finished using your Mirror Lake Manor. I've also cleaned up the set. The crew has all left. Okay, Qin Zhao said. If you need me again, let me know in advance. Where are you now? I'll return the key to you. James borrowed Qin Zhao's house for 2 days. In fact, the filming took less than a day, but the construction and dismantling of the set, as well as the cleaning of the house, took more time. As for the key Qin Zhao had given him, he couldn't use it at all. Because Qin Zhao had given him the authority of the butler system, he could move around the manor without any obstruction. Even if he wanted to go to Qin Zhao's wine cellar, he couldn't stop him. James had entered the wine cellar. The collection inside was estimated to be worth no less than $200 million on the market. On the other hand, Qin Zhao could give him so much authority without any supervision. One could imagine how much trust Qin Zhao had in him. Keep it with you, Qin Zhao said. I'm a bit busy these days. You can ask your assistant to come and get it. She's been taking care of my kids for the past 2 days, Qin Zhao said helplessly. If I make her run errands again, she'll turn against me. Haha. You can get another assistant. I did, Mr. James. Sorry, Portia, you misheard. Because of Qin Zhao, James and Portia were quite close. James also arranged a small role for Portia, who had dreams of becoming a star. His evaluation was that she was not suitable for acting. From then on, Portia never mentioned acting in front of Qin Zhao again. However, Qin Zhao knew that Portia still secretly went to some auditions. Of course, if she didn't tell the people auditioning that she knew Stephen and James, no one would give her the role. In the morning, after Jalanash and Nar came to pick Fei Lai up, Qin Zhao also went to the hospital. The house was left to Portia. Of course, Portia would also take care of the little devil kings at home. To prevent Nadeko Pavich's men from causing trouble, Qin Zhao had all the pets in the house be on guard. As long as he wasn't home, they would be responsible for the manor's safety. Apart from Briar, Bramble, Simba, and Nana, the other pets were all powerful. Even an expert might not be able to leave this place in one piece. When he reached the hospital, he found Four in Syndicate's ward. Hey, Four, why are you here? This isn't the department you're in charge of, right? Four was a doctor in internal medicine, while this was a surgery department. I can't help it. I owe a few surgeons here. They asked me to come and collect Syndicate's postoperative data. Qin Zhao had only volunteered for a few surgeries, but the surgeons here were all shocked by Qin Zhao's skills. However, they were too embarrassed to come and collect Syndicate's data. They were even afraid of causing unnecessary misunderstandings. So, they could only find Four. They all knew that Four was Qin Zhao's sister-in-law. To them, Qin Zhao wouldn't think that his sister-in-law wanted to steal his patient. Tell them to be more generous next time, Qin Zhao said, pretending to be generous. They want to observe my patient, Qin Zhao said, pretending to be generous. I won't chase them away. Beautiful doctor, how's my current situation? Syndicate felt that he was recovering well. However, he wasn't sure if it was just his imagination. The feeling was very vague. When he used a bit of force, it would affect the pain nerves in his arm. It was a very strong pain. Nevertheless, pain was a good thing. The more painful it was, the better the connection between the nerves was. You're in great condition, Four said. But you'll have to ask your main doctor for the details. Drink this. Qin Zhao handed Syndicate a bottle of diluted perfect medicine. Did you make another bottle like this? Four watched as Qin Zhao handed her the black, slightly murky potion. It wasn't the first time she saw Qin Zhao give this black medicine to a patient. She didn't know what it was. She only knew that every time Qin Zhao gave this medicine to a patient, the patient's bodily functions would greatly speed up and recover. Or it could suppress the illness. She'd tried it before. She'd extracted the remaining ingredients from the empty bottle and tested it. However, the results were always disappointing. The ingredients that could be detected were all very ordinary. The ones that couldn't be detected at all. Four had also tried to persuade Qin Zhao to get a patent. The profits would be much greater than if he made and used it alone. However, Qin Zhao always told her that this medicine required some special ingredients. Modern medicine production lines couldn't produce it. Four felt that it was a pity, but she didn't have any more reason to persuade Qin Zhao. She also knew that Qin Zhao was very rich. Syndicate took the potion and drank it immediately. Four, go out for a while. I need to give him a special treatment, Qin Zhao said. Can I watch from the side? I need to use Eastern witchcraft. Bystanders will be cursed. Chapter 2458. Even though Four knew that Qin Zhao was joking, she still left. Syndicate also thought that Qin Zhao was joking. However, he was in a good mood right now, even though his arm hurt a lot. The more painful it was, the happier he was. Anesthetics could reduce the pain, but he enjoyed the current pain more. Only pain could make him feel the existence of his arm. For example, he had broken bones and damaged nerves. If he lost his sense of pain, it would be like losing his arm. But when he saw the set of silver needles, Syndicate still shivered. He'd heard of acupuncture before, but he didn't believe in it. Comparatively, he was more willing to believe in Western medicine. But Qin Zhao wasn't discussing it with him. Soon, Syndicate's arm was filled with silver needles. Each needle contained a sliver of life force. At first, Syndicate resisted. But as the life force seeped into Syndicate's arm, he felt the pain in his arm gradually disappear. It was replaced by a strange feeling of comfort. It was a very special feeling. Qin Zhao moved quickly. After all the life force of a needle flowed into Syndicate's arm, he immediately took out another needle. After replacing hundreds of needles for Syndicate, Qin Zhao finally stopped. Then he put the needles away one by one. After finishing, Qin Zhao started applying medicine to Xian's wound. Syndicate didn't feel any pain anymore. His fingers seemed to have recovered their usual nimbleness. "Mr. Chen, when will my injuries heal?" Syndicate finally stopped doubting Qin Zhao's abilities. 2 days, Qin Zhao said. Hearing Qin Zhao's answer, Syndicate felt strange. On one hand, he felt that his injuries were almost healed. On the other hand, he doubted whether 4 or 5 days could really help him recover. Qin Zhao already had a plan for Syndicate's treatment and recovery. The most troublesome part of the surgery was already done. So the next step was recovery treatment. On the other hand, recovery healing was dispensable. If he wasn't in a hurry, Syndicate could completely recover in a month even if he stopped treatment now. But Qin Zhao clearly didn't want to wait a month. That was why he used life force to treat Syndicate. "In other words, I can see my daughter in 2 days, right?" "Yes, but she's currently isolated in a sterile ward. Other than specialized nurses, no one else is allowed to enter the sterile ward. Hinga's daughter is different from Hinga. Although Syndicate's injuries were severe, they weren't fatal. His daughter, on the other hand, had a heart transplant. On top of that, she was still young, her body was weak, and her resistance was much weaker than that of an adult. Therefore, they couldn't let outsiders enter the ward at this time." "I understand." Although Syndicate was grateful for Qin Zhao's treatment, he said, "Thank you, Mr. Qin." However, he went to the market more because Qin Zhao had helped his daughter. "There's no need. I'm only helping your daughter because you're worth investing in. Mr. Qin, don't worry. I won't lose to Tiger again. I won't lose to anyone. Even if you recover, you're still no match for Tiger." I was careless that day." Qin Zhao shook his head. He had seen the video that the paparazzi had taken that day. Tiger's power was clearly beyond the norm. He had strengthened Tiger before. However, he was at most 1.5 times stronger than other people. He was far from being able to send Syndicate flying with one punch. After all, Syndicate was also a boxer. He wasn't famous, but his abilities and techniques were at the level of a top boxer. How could Tiger do that? He could kill Syndicate in one move. Syndicate's face reddened. He wasn't convinced. However, he couldn't prove that he was indeed KO'd by Tiger that day. "Since you don't believe me, why did you save me?" It's not easy to find someone who can keep up with Tiger in terms of technique and foundation in such a short time, especially someone who can be controlled by me and is willing to be controlled by me. Qin Zhao said without hiding it. "You're weaker than him. There's no doubt about that." Syndicate wasn't convinced, but he didn't want to argue with Qin Zhao now. Right now, Qin Zhao could even be said to be his bread and butter. Arguing with Qin Zhao might not bring him any good results. "Of course, I have my own plan. Bach, how's it going? Is it done?" Tiger had been feeling uneasy these few days. The pressure Qin Zhao gave him was too great. "Don't worry. My boss has already taken over. He's very good at this. There's nothing he can't solve. But it's been so many days. Why hasn't there been any news? Maybe to my boss, this is an insignificant thing. Even if it's done, he won't tell us." Bach was very confident in Mediko Pavich. This confidence was built up through Medico Pavich's ruthless methods time and time again. It seemed that no one could fight against him. It didn't matter if they were businessmen, celebrities, or gangsters. He even seemed to have ways to deal with people in politics. Tiger didn't know Medico Pavich, so he wasn't as confident as Bach. Then help me ask. Tiger was both hopeful and worried. Okay, I really don't know what to do with you. Bach picked up his phone and called Modak Pavich. Hello, Mr. Modak. This is Bach. Tiger has been nagging me. Although I've been telling him that there's no problem that can't be solved by you, Tiger is still worried. So, he asked me to call you and ask if there's any progress on that matter. I haven't gotten any news yet, but my best subordinate is in charge of this. I'll let you know when I get an answer. Okay, thank you, Mr. Medico. After hanging up, Bach pursed his lips. He'd just promised Tiger so confidently. But in the blink of an eye, he'd been slapped in the face. Medico Pavich still hadn't made any progress. Bach glanced at the eager Tiger. Things are going well. You'll get good news soon. Tiger's heart skipped a beat. Bach's words made him panic. The indescribable uneasiness in his heart grew stronger. No! He couldn't just sit here and wait. He had to think of a way to save himself. Tiger avoided Bach's gaze. He lowered his head and his eyes flickered. No one knew what he was thinking. Chapter 2459. Tiger thought about it for a long time. Should he ask Bach for help? Forget it. If he did, he would have to tell his boss again. In the end, nothing would come of it. Tiger decided to do it himself. After more than a year of development, he now had a little bit of his own contacts. After Bach left, Tiger picked up his phone and dialed a number. Hey, Dolores, it's me, Tiger. Tiger said. You haven't come to my house in a while. I have a party tonight. Do you want to come? You're a big star. Are you sure you want to invite a gang to your house? I don't care who you are. I only know you're my friend. Huh? It's exactly because we're friends that I can't go, Dolores said brightly. But you can come to my bar anytime. Don't worry, there won't be any paparazzi here. Tiger went with the flow and said to Dolores. As long as you don't mind me giving you trouble. Huh? I'm more than willing to have a big star at my bar. Then I'll go tonight. Don't you have a party tonight? You're the only important guest. If you don't come, there's no need for the party. Dolores wasn't overjoyed. Instead, he realized that Tiger didn't really want to invite him to the party. He had something to ask of him. Dolores's lips curled into a smile. Of course, he had no reason to reject Tiger's request. After nightfall, Tiger drove his luxurious car to Dolores's bar. Dolores's bar was on Mingo Avenue. Mingo Avenue was the place people didn't want to talk about the most in L.A. There were a total of 12 communities, all of which were dominated by black residents. Although Americans shouted for equality and freedom every year, this society was still based on white supremacy. People of other skin colors were mostly at the bottom here, especially Americans. Most of the other races here were still at the bottom. It was because of poverty, the chaotic environment, and the generally low education level that they had fewer choices. If the social status, population, and education of black people were switched with white people might not necessarily be good people. If the social status, population, and education of black people were to be swapped with that of white people might not necessarily be good people. Mingo Avenue was also the area with the most gangs and the most active illegal activities in the entire Los Angeles. All the gangsters here were mainly black. Even the wild boar King Morgary, known as the Underground King of Los Angeles, could not extend his tentacles into this area. This was because this place repelled foreign powers, or it could be said that it repelled the powers of other skin colors. This was not the rejection of a single gang, but the rejection of hundreds of thousands of black people. No matter how powerful Morgary was, it was impossible for him to fight against hundreds of thousands of black people. It was like if a foreigner went to China and found a place to say that he wanted to be the boss here, he would either get rolled eyes or handcuffs. Of course, the gang's influence on Minge Avenue was only limited to Minge Avenue. They were fighting here, fighting for territory, and the people they harmed were also the residents of Mingo Avenue. It was like an ecological chain. The residents here rejected foreign forces, including foreign investments. Then, they formed local gangs. The local gangs poisoned the local residents. The local residents did not have enough jobs and education, so they could only become members of the local gangs. This was a vicious cycle, but it was also a cycle with no solution. Dolores was the leader of a local gang. Tiger also walked out of a neighborhood on Mingo Avenue. There were very few gangsters like him who could walk out of the slums and become successful in their careers. But as a former member of this place, Tiger would never be able to escape his background. Therefore, when he contacted the local gangs, it was only natural for him to do so. After Tiger's car entered Mingo Avenue, he did not need to worry about the paparazzi following him. No entertainment reporters dared to follow him into Mingo Avenue. Even war reporters who changed careers to paparazzi did not dare to enter this area. There was once a paparazzi who followed a star who walked out of this area. The next day, the paparazzi died on the street. This was definitely not a rumor. It had really happened. Tiger found Dolores's bar with ease. After he got out, he handed the car to a gangster wandering outside. At the same time, he gave him $200 bills. "Before I come out, this car is yours. Don't break it." The gangster was overjoyed. He wanted to pounce on Tiger and kiss him. Of course, even though he had been a car thief before, he did not dare to steal Tiger's car directly. He knew the rules here. If he dared to do that, he would definitely have his entire family killed the next day. Tiger walked through the dim corridor. Loud black music kept coming from ahead. Then, the light in front of them suddenly became bright and dark, and the music became noisy and noisy. Tiger pulled a bald guy over. "Where's your boss?" "In the private room above," the bald guy answered. Tiger stuffed another bill into the bald man's hand. He went up the stairs to the private room and pushed the door open. Under the dim light of the private room, a black man and 3 women were doing something indescribable. Dolores looked up at Tiger at the door. He was not angry or panicked. Instead, he waved. "My friend, you came at the right time." Tiger sat beside Dolores. Just then, a woman knelt before him. Dolores pushed a glass of wine to Tiger. "Here, have a drink." Tiger raised the glass and drank. Under the stimulation of the alcohol, he felt even happier. Phew! Tiger and Dolores began toasting each other. Both of them were enjoying the pleasure of the wine and the women. After 3 rounds, Dolores got to the main topic. "Tiger, did you run into some trouble recently?" Tiger did not answer Dolores's question. He continued drinking. Dolores patted the woman's cheek. "Baby, you guys go out first. I'll talk to Tiger." The women in the room obediently left. Before they left, they even blew Tiger a kiss. "Tiger, don't worry. Nothing you say here will be heard outside." Tiger's eyes flashed. After a brief hesitation, he finally said, "Dolores, I need your help." A smile appeared on Dolores's face. A big fish had taken the bait. Chapter 2460. We're brothers. Just tell me if you need anything. Tiger gulped down another mouthful of alcohol. He'd drunk quite a bit, but his mind was still clear. Dolores's power wasn't small, but compared to Chen Zhao's, it was still not enough. Tiger didn't want to face Chen Zhao's anger directly. So, he decided to change his target. "Dolores, you know the recent news, right? It's about me." "Of course." Dolores patted Tiger. "What? Is Syndicate still looking for trouble with you? I'll go kill him." "It's not that simple." Tiger shook his head. "As long as he's dead, there won't be any trouble." "It's not that simple. Syndicate has a big shot protecting him." "Then I'll kill him too." Dolores said nonchalantly. I'll just send a few more people. Tiger was shocked. Please don't. Let Dolores send people to kill Chen Zhao. If it was that simple, he wouldn't have to worry. Box boss, Medeko Pavich, had gone to deal with Chen Zhao's family. But there was still no result. What good would Dolores get if he went? Why? Do you think I can't beat that big shot? Dolores, you don't have to offend him. Whether you can beat him or not, it'll be a big problem. Dolores thought about it. Indeed, Tiger's enemy definitely wasn't a gang on Mingo Avenue. His power would be greatly weakened after leaving Mingo Avenue, so he wouldn't be so unrestrained. If he offended a gang leader outside, it would indeed bring him a lot of trouble. He might not be afraid, but just as Tiger said, if it turned into a gang war, it would attract the government's attention. That would be really big trouble. Then what do you think we should do? Think of a way to kidnap Syndicate's daughter and use her to threaten him so that he'll give up on fighting me. There won't be a large-scale battle, Tiger said. Dolores thought for a while and nodded. Okay. When we do it, don't be too flashy. It'll be troublesome if the media notices, Tiger said. He wasn't afraid of the media's attention. He was afraid of Chen Zhao's attention. Chen Zhao used Syndicate to show him his attitude. To Chen Zhao, Xian Zhao was a chess piece. Tiger's ultimate goal was to make Syndicate give up on revenge. As long as Syndicate was willing to give up on this idea, Chen Zhao would have no more pawns to use. But Chen Zhao didn't seem to want to do it himself. As long as he didn't make a move himself, he still had a chance. But if Chen Zhao found out that he had sent people to kidnap Syndicate's daughter, in that case, Chen Zhao might change his mind. Tiger's plan was to do as little as possible to make Chen Zhao give up on his original plan. If he apologized on his own, Chen Zhao might let bygones be bygones. Tiger clearly didn't know Chen Zhao's personality well enough to have such an idea. Mr. Hampson, is there any progress? Medeko Pavich dialed Hampson's number. This time, Hampson's operation wasn't as clean as usual. Mr. Mayak, we seem to be in trouble. I sent 3 teams, one to deal with the target, and the other 2 to deal with the target's woman and child. The team dealing with the target's daughter and child discovered traces of a spiritualist beside them, so they haven't made a move yet. As for the team directly dealing with the target, I sent the most outstanding members of the younger generation, Shaq and Arsene Wenger, but the 2 of them have gone missing. I suspect that they've met with misfortune. Mr. Medeko, Hampson said coldly. You didn't say that we're dealing with spiritualists. I thought we were dealing with regular people. What? That Chinese guy is also in the same field? Medeko Pavich's expression changed. He didn't expect it either. He thought that the guy was rich. He didn't expect that the guy was also a spiritualist. Are there many spiritualists in the world? Not many, Hampson said. Very few. How strong is the guy? How strong can he be in this barren land of magic? Hampson sneered. He's from the east, but if he had some ability, he wouldn't have come to this magic desert. So you're saying that he's nothing? I'm just surprised. It's not too much trouble for me, Hampson said. Hampson said, it's just calling back the younger generation and exchanging a few of the third generation. Then let's move quickly, Medeko Pavich urged. But those third-generation people are too proud, Hampson said, troubled. I'm afraid they won't be willing to do it. Medeko Pavich was a bit unhappy. Wasn't he just asking for more benefits? If we can solve this, I'll add another 20%. Ha, Mr. Medeko, that's not what I mean. I really want the third-generation people to go, but they're really hard to control. Mr. Hampson, I know it's not easy for you, so I've decided to increase the funding by 50%. Thank you, Mr. Medeko. I'll try my best to convince them. All right, then I'll have to trouble you, Mr. Hampson. Medeko Pavich knew that Hampson had come out of his seclusion a few years ago. He was no longer as naive as he had been in the beginning. Moreover, he was no longer as helpless as he had been in the beginning. It was no longer possible for him to force them to be his dogs with just a few pieces of meat. It seemed that he had to find an opportunity to change the leader of Immortal Crown. Of course, he still had a use for him at the moment, so Madeko hid his thoughts in his heart. After hanging up, Hamsun's face immediately turned gloomy. Madeko Pavich was already dissatisfied with his constant demands. It seemed that he needed to find a new backer after getting the benefits this time. But Los Angeles was a good place. There were many rich people here, and it was much more fun than boring London. The most important thing was that the supernatural world here was too weak. It was not like England at all. When they left their seclusion, they were targeted. No matter what they did, they were suppressed by the rules. Even the establishment of Immortal Crown had to be registered first. But Los Angeles did not have that feeling at all. No one came to talk to them about the rules here. Hamsun felt that this was the most suitable place for Immortal Crown to develop. It seemed that he needed to recruit everyone here. Chapter 2461. Manor, go and bring this person back. Uncle Hamsun, this man is our main target in Los Angeles, right? Didn't you ask Shaq and Arsen to take care of this? Manuel was Hamsun's nephew and could be considered Hamsun's trusted aide. Manuel's parents had passed away a long time ago. Hamsun had raised Manuel himself. Moreover, even his magic was taught by Hamsun step by step. There was a small accident. This Chinese should be a spiritualist too. Shaq and Arsen are missing. They've probably met with misfortune. Be careful. I don't trust the others. Got it, Uncle Hamsun. Also, have you found anything about the thing I asked you to find out? I've heard about the local spiritualists in L.A., but none of them are doing well. Plus, the people here don't really believe in magic, so it's not easy to find a big fish, Marnia said. Uncle Hamsun, are we really going to develop here? Why don't we move to a place with a better foundation in the spiritual world? Hamsun naturally knew what Manuel was talking about. Why was North America a magic desert? It wasn't just because of the short history. It was also because of the social structure here. People preferred to believe in the power of money. That was why they didn't believe in ghosts and gods. If people didn't have faith, there were even fewer spiritualists who could awaken. But why did most of the descendants of spiritualists awaken? Because they knew about the existence of magic, it was easier for them to awaken. They even had their own ways and experiences. Coupled with the fact that they didn't believe it, it would be extremely difficult for any organization from the other world to take root here. Hamsun sighed. Do you think I don't want to? But most of the places in the spirit world that you mentioned have been occupied by other forces, and they've been developing for decades, or even centuries. What right do you think we have to go there and fight for territory with them? Only in North America, where most of the other regions are still uninhabited, can we take root and sprout in such an environment. The Crown of Immortality was founded in London, but London's spiritual world was already saturated. Regardless of whether it was a group or an individual spiritualist, there were countless of them. Although the Crown of Immortality was registered in London, it couldn't find any room for development in London. Occasionally, they would discover one or two newly awakened geniuses. Just as they were about to rope them in, they discovered that those awakened ones had already contacted other groups. If they continued waiting, the Immortal Crown would be like a newborn baby that would be strangled in the cradle before it could fully develop. That was why Hamsun wanted to find an ideal place to develop again. However, there was no such thing as an ideal place in this world. In this era, the spiritual world was actually a beneficiary of modern civilization. This was because in the past, there might have been a large area with no magic. Perhaps this place would never have a spiritualist set foot here. But in this era, as long as there were people, there would be spiritualists. There was a large flow of people in every region, and the mobility of spiritualists had also increased. It was no longer difficult to find another area with no magic. It was completely impossible. That was why Hamsun decided to develop in North America. Naturally, North America had to choose a city with the best economic conditions. In North America, Los Angeles, New York, and Washington were all very good places. At the very least, in terms of the level of development of the local area, even spiritualists would flock to these few internationally renowned metropolises. However, Washington was the political center of America. Coupled with the cautious attitude of the American authorities, it was difficult to allow an uncontrolled supernatural group to take root in Washington. There were also 2 or 3 large-scale supernatural groups in New York. If the crown of immortality went there, not to mention taking root, it would probably be expelled from New York. On the contrary, Los Angeles was unexpectedly suitable for Hampson. Although the atmosphere here was a little bad, at least it gave him hope of developing and growing. If they relied on the marriage between spiritualists, the number of awakened descendants definitely wouldn't be enough. For example, when the previous generation lived in seclusion, there were hundreds of people. By the time the 5th generation came out, there were less than 100 people left. Therefore, people outside the group had to awaken and join to maintain the number of people in a supernatural group. Uncle Hampson, we have 3 choices if we want to stay here and develop. Tell me about it. The first choice is to join the government, Manel said. Hampson frowned. He didn't like to be in contact with the government. When they were in London, people from the government had taken the initiative to contact them, trying to make them part of the government. At that time, Hampson had already considered it, but the people of the government gave them all kinds of intolerable conditions. That was the main reason why Hampson planned to move. What else? A gang. We control a gang as a source of funding for the crown of immortality. It's risky, but as long as we hide it well, there's still room for maneuver. Hampson wasn't very satisfied. Is there any other way? Find a businessman and become his helper, Manel said. But in order to provide us with sufficient funds and opportunities for development, we need a big businessman, Marnia said. Although the Crown of Immortality had chosen fewer than 100 people, their expenses were actually not small. Plus, their plan was to stay in Los Angeles, which would cost at least tens of millions of dollars. To be under the command of a big businessman, they had to create enough value. It was easy to find 1 or 2 big businessmen who needed magic power, but difficult to find someone who needed it long term. Of course, they could also find a business and rely on themselves. But this seemed to be the best way, and also the most impossible choice. Relying on them, who had no modern business experience, and all their knowledge was from the previous era, to do business. It would probably be a waste of money no matter how much it was. But before that, we need to get enough money from Madeko Pavich, Hampson said. He doesn't need us much anymore, so this request for help might be the last time we work together. Plus, he has some dirt on us, and we also have a lot of dirt on him. If we choose to stay in Los Angeles and cut ties with him, I'm afraid it'll be hard for us to coexist peacefully. So, instead of waiting for us to turn against him in the future, it's better to make him lose the chance to make a move as soon as possible. Chapter 2462. After a busy day, Qin Zhao drove on the rural road. Because the road was empty, Qin Zhao was faster. Just then, he saw the front of his car start to deform. It was as if he had crashed into an invisible wall. Boom! The car was traveling at a speed of more than 100 kilometers per hour. The moment he crashed, the car was smashed into pieces. Qin Zhao could feel it the moment he crashed into it. However, he didn't get out of the car. He even used his ability to make the crash even more intense. At the same time, Qin Zhao ignited his damaged car. Instantly, a violent explosion engulfed Qin Zhao. Just then, a person walked out from the road. It was Manuel. Uncle Hampson, it's done. Huh! That fast? Hampson was surprised. After all, the person had made Arsenal and Sark disappear. He should have some ability. Manuel was quite powerful, but since he was up against Qin Zhao, it shouldn't be that easy. Qin Zhao had only been out for less than 3 hours. Excluding the time spent on the road, there wasn't much time left. Just then, Hampson suddenly heard a second person's voice on the phone. Done? Who did you kill? How come you're not dead? Beep beep, then there was only a dead tone. Hamsen's expression instantly turned ugly. Manuel screamed. His hand and phone were both crushed by Qin Zhao's hand. Let me guess. You were also sent by Medeko Pavich? Also, I heard you call Hamsen uncle. Arsenal and Shaq also mentioned that Hamsen is your leader. What rank are you in your immortal crown? Qin Zhao wasn't asking at all. He was talking to himself. He squeezed Manuel's palm with one hand. Manuel's left palm had been completely deformed. Magnell endured the pain and took out his wand with his other hand. Black Death Magic Ray! A black bolt of lightning shot out from the staff. However, when it was less than 10 centimeters from Qin Zhao, it flashed strangely like an electric welder. It couldn't get any closer. Qin Zhao didn't care at all. He continued talking to himself. What level is your strength in your immortal crown? Strong or weak? Dragon's breath. The magic staff shot out terrifying flames again, but this time, it couldn't even go 20 centimeters in front of Qin Zhao. The evil dragon's breath didn't even manage to travel half the distance before it disappeared without a trace. Where is your base camp? Where is it in England? London? Despair soul, how does the crown of immortality rank in London? Heel of great evil, eternal slumber I light. Marshall was in despair. All of his spells were useless against him. What was wrong with this guy? No, he couldn't let this continue. Manuel was sweating profusely at the moment. It was hard to tell whether it was from fear or pain. Manuel gritted his teeth and tapped his wand on the ground. Evil god of hell! Come out! Marshall's spell required a large amount of magic and continuous chanting. Fortunately, Qin Zhao had no intention of interrupting him. The more mana was consumed, the weaker he became. However, the magic array on the ground had already taken shape. A terrifyingly large arm pierced through the magic array. The arm slapped the ground beside Qin Zhao and used it as a foothold to prop up half of its body. Evil god of hell? Qin Zhao turned his head and looked at the evil god before him. The half-exposed giant didn't have the aura of hell on him. He wasn't a demon either. He definitely didn't come from hell. By now, Manuel was exhausted from overexertion. He was almost paralyzed on the ground. You're not wearing any clothes when you go out. Go back. Qin Zhao pressed down with his left hand. Instantly, the power of the world turned into a giant palm. It slapped the giant's head, who hadn't climbed out of the magic array yet. Bang! Half of the giant's body was smashed. Then, the magic array disappeared. The minced meat on the ground also turned into specks of starlight and dissipated. Manuel's mouth gaped in shock. He couldn't say anything for a long time. Instantly, all of Manuel's hair stood on end. Creepy. Who exactly was this guy? He'd summoned the evil god of hell. But he couldn't even block one attack from this guy. Qin Zhao pursed his lips. This evil god of hell wasn't just famous. Even his strength didn't match his huge body. Other than being terrifyingly huge, he didn't have any other abilities. Qin Zhao had only planned to shove him back into the magic array with one palm. But the palm had smashed him into pieces. If this guy came from hell and had strength that matched his size, he should be able to protect himself. Plus, Qin Zhao didn't even use his own strength in that palm. He'd only used a portion of the power of the world. With such weak strength, he'd been killed in one move. But thinking about Manuel's strength, it didn't seem like he could summon a creature that was too powerful. Qin Zhao had thought that the evil god of hell was similar in size to the abyss demons. Their strength should be similar too. But other than their sizes, there wasn't anything similar. Qin Zhao had thought that since Manuel could summon a powerful creature, the members of the association probably couldn't deal with his Uncle Hamsen. But now, he realized that Manuel wasn't as strong as he'd imagined. West, come here. I caught another person who attacked me. He's also with that group. West heard Qin Zhao's words. He was speechless now. Qin Zhao was already speechless. At least his courage was worth praising. But couldn't the attacker be more powerful? Arsenal and Shaq's strength was simply an insult to others. Any random person from the headquarters could beat them up, let alone Qin Zhao. Including Aduz. Don't think that Aduz was weak as a guard. With Aduz's enchanted equipment, there was basically no monster in the Los Angeles area that he could not deal with. Of course, this was because the ignorant were fearless. Qin Zhao was probably the only one who knew how strong he was. Qin Zhao wasn't famous, so it was understandable that he'd come here to cause trouble. West felt that the person who came to pick a fight was a little weak. When West brought people over, he was shocked to see that Qin Zhao's car had been destroyed. Could it be that the people this time were very strong? He could actually destroy Qin Zhao's car? Looking at Manuel, who was in Qin Zhao's hand, West's expression turned serious. Chapter 2463. Mr. Manuel, you too. Shaq and Arsene Wenger were locked in two separate cells in the dungeon. When they saw Manuel being dragged down like a dead dog and thrown into the opposite cell, they couldn't help but be shocked. Manuel had just received a baptism of love from all the members of the supernatural organization. Everyone looked at him like he was a rare animal in the zoo. After a while they left. Not long after, another one came. Of course, this was only mental torture. The real terror came from the physical torture. The members of the supernatural organization all copied Qin Zhao's actions. Either they didn't attack, or they were extremely ruthless. When the police were interrogating someone, they might have to worry about leaving traces on the suspect. But they didn't have to worry at all. They were ruthless. Even if Manuel cried and begged to tell them the information. But his torturers were just torturing him for fun. As for the information, it didn't matter if they had it or not. Before Sark and Arsenal were sent here, they'd also enjoyed the full service of the supernatural organization. So they knew what kind of inhumane treatment Manuel had suffered. However, they couldn't do anything apart from looking at Marnia. Manuel lay on the ground for almost an hour. Only then did he slowly turn his head and look at Shaq and Arsenal, who were locked up opposite him. "Mr. Manuel, how are you now? The two of you actually didn't die." Mana was somewhat resentful towards Shaq and Arsenal, because they'd told him all the information. This caused West and the others to torture him purely for the sake of torturing him. He'd suffered a lot of torture for no reason. Couldn't they leave some information for him to tell them? Arsenal and Sark were both embarrassed. They thought that their information had caused Manuel to be captured. "Mr. Manuel, Manuel suddenly jumped up. "Oh no! What's wrong? Uncle Hampson didn't just arrange for me. He also arranged for Dempus and Quince to do it." Evening, Angel Coast. By now, most of the tourists on the coastline had left. Only a few figures seemed to be packing up and preparing to leave. Alan had been sitting on a bench by the road. He held a drink in his hand and stared at the Coastal Rescue Team HQ silently. At this moment, Alan suddenly felt someone appear beside him. "Mr. Dempus, why are you here?" Alan turned around and saw that it was actually his elder. "Mr. Hampson saw that you didn't make a move after following him for a few days, so he asked me to come over and help you," Dempus coldly said. "Where is the target now?" "She's out," Alan said as he pointed in the direction of the Coastal Rescue Team. Phelan walked out of the Coastal Rescue Team. Just then, Jalanash and Nar walked over. "Miss Phelan, are you off work?" "Yes, we can go back now." "Jalanash, someone's looking this way," Nar said. Jalanash raised an eyebrow. "Who is it?" "I don't know where they came from, but they are not weak. They are in," Nar said. "Don't point. Pretend you didn't find anything. Get in the car," Jalanash said. "Miss Phelan, drive the car to a remote place." "Jalan, you've grown a lot braver." Nar chuckled as he patted Jalanash's shoulder. "I still have you," Jalanash said calmly. "I didn't say I was going to help." "Fine, since I'm living and eating, I'll reluctantly help you this time." Jalanash wondered if she should look for a few detection and perception spells later. She actually didn't realize that someone was watching them at all. Then the three girls got in the car and left. Actually, they didn't need to drive to a remote place, because Mingwa Villa was already very remote. According to Nar, the two people who were monitoring them had been following them. President, we're on the way back to Mingwa Villa. There's a car following us. Jalanash was confident that she could take care of the stalker alone. But just to be safe, she decided to inform Chen Zhao. Huh. I know. Where are you now? We're about to enter the coastal highway. I'm at home, Chen Zhao said. I'll come out now. Dempus, who was following them, saw that this place was already remote enough. Speed up and knock over the car in front, Dempus said. Alan immediately sped up and chased after the car in front. They're going to attack. Looking at the car behind them, Jalanash said. They're speeding up. It looks like they're going to hit us. But just then, Feilai suddenly sped up. She was only driving an ordinary four-seater today, but it was still a luxury car. Its performance was much better than Alan's and Dempus's cars. Feilai didn't plan on letting the stalker hit the back of her car. After all, if she was hit, the repair fees wouldn't be small. Can you open the sunroof? Nar asked. What are you going to do? I'll go up and give them a shot. Feilai looked at Jalanash beside her. Jalanash looked at Nar and asked hesitantly. Are you sure? Of course, trust me, Nar said confidently. Seeing Nar's confidence, Jalanash still let Feilai open the sunroof. Be careful. Don't fall. Nar, however, climbed out of the sunroof and stood on the roof of the car. What's with that girl? What does she want? Alan asked from the car behind. She seems to want to attack us from so far away. Then don't worry, I'm here. I'll drive your car, Dempus said confidently. At this time, Nar, who was standing on the roof, had already started to release magic. Nar opened his arms and slightly spread them back. Then, he took a deep breath. Dempus was still full of confidence. Mr. Dempus, shouldn't we do some defense? No need. That girl is more than 30 meters away from us. No matter what magic it is, its power will be greatly reduced after hitting us. Also, she's young, so she won't be that strong. It's not too late for me to attack after she attacks. If we attack rashly now, we might make a mistake, Dempus said calmly. At this moment, Nar suddenly shouted and swung his arm forward. Storm's breath. An elementalist? Dempus raised his eyebrows. But the lethality of wind magic is too small. But just as Dempus finished speaking, the car he and Alan were in suddenly bounced up. At high speed, the car suddenly rolled over. Chapter 2464. Under normal circumstances, Nar's breath of the storm couldn't flip a car. A small car weighed more than 1,500 kilograms. Flipping it over required a wind speed of at least 140 meters per second. Normal wind magic couldn't create such a wind speed. But nothing was absolute in this world. Nar was smart too. Dempus and Alan's car was in motion. Moreover, Nar used the leverage principle. She didn't release magic directly at the car behind her. After calculating the distance and speed of the car behind her, she released breath of the storm on the ground. When the breath of the storm landed on the ground, it formed an angular reflection, forming a local storm at a small angle. Just then, the car behind came over. The local storm directly affected the bottom of the car. In addition, the inertia from the speed of the car behind made it much less force needed to flip it over. That was how the previous results came about. But what really flipped the car over was its own speed. Nar's breath of the storm was a guide. Even Jalanash was surprised. At that moment, Qin Zhao, who was in the night sky, also exclaimed, "What a beautiful attack!" He'd met that girl once when Jalanash had sent Feilai home yesterday. Because her magic level was at least half that of Jalanash. Qin Zhao didn't expect her to be so good at wind magic. After all, Qin Zhao had seen Jalanash use wind magic before. It definitely couldn't have such an effect. Just when everyone thought that the situation was settled, suddenly, the window of the car on the road was kicked open. Dempus climbed out of the car in a sorry state. There was blood on his forehead. He'd clearly been injured. Qin Zhao was surprised that he still had the strength to climb out. Under the perception of the small world, Qin Zhao realized that Alan's injuries were more serious. At least Alan had lost the ability to fight. Dempus looked angrily at the car that was gradually moving away. All of a sudden, Dempus' figure flashed as he charged out. Speed type! Qin Zhao raised an eyebrow. So fast. Nar also realized that Dempus had caught up. Dempus was an extremely powerful strengthening type and speed type spiritualist. But Qin Zhao realized that Dempus' magic was different from Angelite's. An elite had directly added magic to his body. But Dempus' acceleration magic was applied to his legs. His upper body did not speed up. In terms of speed, he was no match for an elite. However, this method of acceleration also had its advantages. Dempus could use other methods of attack while running. This was also an advantage that an elite did not have. Angelite's magic and bloodline were very simple. They only increased his speed and slightly increased his physical strength. Apart from that, he also had an attack method similar to Qin Zhao's fist shadows. However, this kind of attack was also based on physical effects, not magic. Dempus pointed his magic staff at the car in front. Go to hell! The magic staff in Dempus' hand burst forth with a terrifying electric arc. Oh no, turn! An AR exclaimed. But at that moment, the terrifying electric arc was suddenly blocked by something. Nar couldn't see it clearly. He could only see the terrifying arc bursting out a strong curtain of electricity more than 20 meters behind him. What's going on? Who was the one who used his body to block that guy's attack? Stop the car! The car did not stop because it was completely unnecessary. No need, Feilai said. We'll only cause trouble if we go. She knew that she was just a normal person. She'd discussed this with Qin Zhao before. When both of them were in danger, should she stay and face it together with Qin Zhao? In the end, the result was that if she stayed, Qin Zhao's chances of winning would be lower. Facing it together wasn't the best result. When there was a chance to leave the danger zone, Feilai should find a chance to escape first. This is our president's private territory, Jalanash said matter-of-factly. Do you think someone can attack Miss Feilai here? Was it your president who attacked us? Nar asked. Aren't we going to help your president? The guy who attacked us is really strong. No need, Qin can solve the problem, Feilai said confidently. She didn't know how strong Qin Zhao was either. However, he was definitely stronger than the enemy who attacked them. The people of the supernatural organization had said more than once that Qin Zhao was one of the strongest humans in the world. Other than a nuclear attack, they couldn't think of any way to kill Qin Zhao. Of course, Dempus didn't know. Even if he did, he wouldn't believe it. However, his fearlessness and ignorance didn't change the result. With the obvious difference in power, he couldn't change the result no matter what he did. After 2 magic attacks didn't work, he immediately planned to escape. But his speed enhancement spell couldn't surpass Qin Zhao's speed. Qin Zhao easily blocked Dempus' escape route again. When Feilai drove the car into the underground garage, Qin Zhao was already in the living room. The 3 girls came to the living room and saw Qin Zhao sitting with his legs crossed. President, is it done? Chen, where is he? Did you kill him? No, I sent him back to the headquarters. Is your HQ nearby? You're so fast? Na looked at Qin Zhao in surprise. She'd only met Qin Zhao once. Yesterday, after sending Feilai back with Jalanash, they'd had dinner here. However, Qin Zhao was like a sloppy man at home. He didn't have the dignity of a superior or the pride of a strong person. She thought that she was strong. However, the power that Dempus had displayed just now was hard for her to handle. She didn't expect Qin Zhao to finish the battle in less than 10 minutes. He'd also returned home first. Are you a speed enhancer? Sort of, Qin Zhao said. Speed is one of my strengths. You're not a pure speed type? No, my magic system is more complicated. Qin Zhao stood up. Let's eat dinner together. Na realized that Qinzhao's dinner was even more sumptuous than last night. There's so much food. Can we finish it with just a few of us? I just fought. I need to replenish my energy. Fei Lai rolled her eyes at Qinzhao. Qinzhao ate so much every day. Just then, Helis brought the kids out of the elevator. Helis clapped her hands. Go wash your hands and eat. Yes, Sister Helis. Helis sat beside Jalanash. She didn't treat herself as an outsider here. Did you wash your hands? Qinzhao glanced at Helis. Chapter 2465. Helis raised her palms. The aura of death flowed through her palms. President, do you need me to explain the principle of my purification? Forget it. Qinzhao did not want to hear how the aura of death killed the microorganisms in her palms. Perhaps the microorganisms could not even survive on her palms. The children quickly hopped to their seats. All of them were excitedly talking about the interesting things they had encountered in school today. Helis, were you attacked? Fei Lai asked, concerned. No, Miss Fei Lai. Were you attacked? Helis could not help but ask, raising an eyebrow. The children immediately stopped talking and looked at Fei Lai. Auntie Fei Lai, were you attacked? What a pity! Why didn't we? I prepared a few spells to teach the people who attacked us a lesson. Why didn't they attack us? The adults at the table all had dark expressions. Apart from Helis, no one else thought that being attacked was a good thing. As for Helis, she had originally thought that this was the mission that Qinzhao had given her, to look after the children. But now, she felt that she had to become a protector. And because she didn't encounter any attacks today, it made her very unhappy, very unhappy. Stanley, you didn't attack, right? Mr. Hampson, didn't you say to wait for Mr. Truman to come before working with him? Mr. Truman didn't come. That's good, that's good. If he contacts you, tell him immediately not to attack for now. Huh? Why? Manel, Allen, and Dempus all failed. We've completely lost contact with them now. Huh? Mr. Hampson, why didn't you contact Mr. Truman directly? I can't. Then could he already know? Hampson knew Truman very well. In the third generation, Truman's magic talent and abilities were the most outstanding. Even Hampson himself was not confident that he could deal with Truman. However, Truman had a huge flaw. He had no self-control. Especially when it came to drinking. To put it bluntly, he was a drunkard, a terrible drunkard. Most of the time, he would get drunk and delay his mission. Those juniors might not know, but Hampson understood Truman too well. After all, Truman was his direct disciple, and the student had surpassed his master. In the third generation, Truman was the youngest, but he was also the most outstanding. If he was given another 10 years to reach the average age of the other third generation, his strength would definitely be enough to kill him on the beach. Go to the bars and have a look. Maybe you can find him. Hampson thought for a moment and said, Forget it, I will get someone to divine his location. The current situation was somewhat out of his expectations. First, it was Manuel, and now, something had happened to his nephew. Then something happened to Allen and Dempus. One could imagine that their goal this time was not as simple as they had initially thought. Dempus and Manel's strength was at the top of the third generation, or even the entire Immortal Crown. But now, they had lost contact with both of them. This caused Hampson to suddenly feel an unprecedented pressure. After all, this was not their home ground. He realized that the intelligence he had gathered earlier on was completely useless. All the spiritualists they had found and contacted had not told them that there was a local group that was not weak. In Hampson's opinion, this was not only not weak, but also very strong. Of course, Hampson did not know that most of the spiritualists active and making a living in the Los Angeles area maintained a certain relationship with the supernatural organization. When a foreign spiritualist or an organization came here, they would tell the other party most of the true information, but they would tacitly keep some information. The supernatural organization maintained a good relationship with the local spiritualists. Of course, those who were not on good terms were basically driven away. And for some local supernatural incidents, as long as it was a problem that could be solved by an individual, the supernatural organization would not interfere. At the very least, they had to leave some jobs for the individual spiritualists to support their families. This was also a manifestation of the prosperity of the area's supernatural world. If all the supernatural incidents were monopolized by one or two large groups, then the area's supernatural world would lose its vitality. And the supernatural organization would not only leave the individual spiritualists with the opportunity to complete missions, but also cooperate with them. And Hampson's helplessness also stemmed from their own immaturity. The crown of immortality had only been established for a short time. They spent most of their time in London. Therefore, they did not understand that when going to an unfamiliar area or city for information, most of the time, they had to go to the local supernatural organization instead of individuals. Wes, the guys who were caught, didn't they say where they were hiding? Helly's dialed West's number and asked. They did. Do you want to go alone? Yes. Actually, the president already knows, West said. He's just monitoring them now, but he hasn't done anything yet. He has his own plan. Hearing West's words, Helis was a little disappointed. She couldn't ruin his plan. She had indeed wanted to go and destroy the crown of immortality's hiding place alone. But she was still unhappy. Why was she not attacked? Was it because she was too strong? But she had not shown her strength. Plus, she hid her aura much better than Jalanash. Jalanash and Nash had been attacked, but why was she not? Was it because the other party thought that she could be easily dealt with? That was why she had purposely hidden in the dark and watched, only acting when needed. Help me tell the president that I want to be the main force when we attack the English. Okay, I'll tell him. West did not mind. Based on the information from the captives, he knew that the Crown of Immortality's people in Los Angeles were not weak. After all, they were an organization from Europe. However, they were at the bottom in Europe, while the supernatural organization was the strongest supernatural organization in North America. This was almost equivalent to a third-tier European football club going up against a first-tier Chinese football club. Of course, some of the people in the supernatural organization had already reached the level of a top spiritualist. In soccer, it was impossible for one person to fight against an entire team, but it was possible in the supernatural world. 9 Heaven's Divine Emperor. Chapter 2466. Mr. Chen, I think I still need to rest. I don't think I've fully recovered yet. Syndicate had thought that he'd already recovered when he was hospitalized. However, the moment he stepped out of the hospital, he felt a dull pain in his arms again. Chen Zhao glanced at Syndicate. If you're not ready, I'll transfer your daughter to a regular ward. If your training doesn't meet my expectations, I'll send your daughter home directly. All right. Sinka immediately agreed. His daughter was his weakness. He couldn't disobey Qin Zhao's request at all. Okay. Run from here to Mountain Town. Mountain Town? Where? Do I have to run? I'll send you the GPS. Before I leave, can I see my daughter again? Sure. Qin Zhao nodded. Syndicate walked out of the isolation ward and saw a tall and burly woman. Even the woman who was slightly taller than him was sitting outside the isolation ward with her eyes closed. Syndicate was stunned. The woman before him gave him a very dangerous feeling. She definitely wasn't a nurse here. A nurse wouldn't give him such a creepy feeling. You're... Gaia opened her eyes and glanced at Syndicate indifferently. I'll be responsible for your daughter's safety for now, Gaia said calmly. I'll also be responsible for part of your training. You? Syndicate sounded doubtful. He wasn't doubting Gaia's professionalism, but he didn't think that Gaia had the ability. There was an undeniable difference in physical fitness between men and women. With the same weight, height, and fat content, men's fitness was obviously higher than women's. A dangerous glint suddenly shot out of Gaia's eyes. Syndicate retreated abruptly. In that instant, he felt like he'd been targeted by an extremely dangerous predator. Goosebumps rose all over his body. His limbs also stiffened severely. I can't move. Syndicate suddenly realized that his body was completely frozen. He couldn't move at all. The next moment, a smile appeared on Gaia's face. At the same time, Syndicate's body was no longer restrained. Not bad, Gaia said with a smile. As expected of a professional boxer who's fought in the ring. But at this moment, Syndicate felt an indescribable bitterness. He didn't understand what was wrong with this woman. However, he knew that if they were in the ring, this woman could KO him in an instant. Because it was impossible to resist the suffocating pressure in the instant she made her move. Did Mr. Chen send you here? Tiger is half her disciple. Just then, Chen Zhao walked over. Xian Jia was dazed. Tiger was her disciple? But if you want to accept my technical training, please complete his physical training first, Gaia said, pointing at Chen Zhao. Hinga looked at the glass window, the peaceful daughter. Take care of my angel, thank you. This time, Syndicate finally made up his mind. Xian Jia held the phone and looked at the navigation. Mr. Chen, 55 kilometers from here to Mountain Town? Or did you send me the wrong location? That's right. But I'm a boxer, a heavyweight boxer. It's impossible for me to run that far. No, you can escape. I really can't run. Think about your daughter, and you'll be able to run. Heavyweight boxers don't train like this. I trained Tiger before. Do you think you're better than him now? Xian Jia really wanted to discuss this with Chen Zhao. However, considering that his daughter still needed to rely on Chen Zhao for recovery after surgery, thus, Xian Jia kept his personal thoughts to himself. Mr. Chen, you want to run too? I'll follow you. Soon, Xian Jia understood why Chen Zhao would follow him. He ran in front while Chen Zhao drove and enjoyed the scenery along the way. Plus, Chen Zhao was eating ice cream. This, on the other hand, was a form of torture for Syndicate. Do you want one? Chen Zhao drove slowly to the side. It's high-calorie food. It's not healthy. Only if I say it's not healthy, Chen Zhao said matter-of-factly. Because he was the authority, his words were the truth. People needed to be forced. If they didn't, they wouldn't know where their limits were. Xian Jia couldn't believe that he'd actually run 55 kilometers. What did 55 kilometers mean? It was longer than a marathon. However, it would take Sin nearly 13 hours to complete the task. He'd run from morning to 9 at night. He wasn't a marathon runner to begin with. He didn't know how to allocate his stamina at all. In addition, he was twice as heavy as an ordinary long-distance runner. It was a huge test for his stamina and endurance. However, whenever he thought of his daughter, he'd be filled with fighting spirit. It could be said that his daughter was the one who supported him. When he reached his destination, he lay on the grass beside the road, panting. As an athlete, you should know that there is a possibility of cardiac arrest if you suddenly lie down after a strenuous exercise. Fuck, I don't care. I don't even want to move now. Xian Jia cursed. Just then, Chen Zhao's phone rang. Okay, got it. Chen Zhao replied briefly. After hanging up, Chen Zhao said, Get in the car. Where are we going? Gaia caught a few people who tried to approach the isolation room. Chen Zhao said. Xian Jia jumped up from the ground. How's my daughter? She's fine. She's fine. After Xian Jia got in the car, he started urging Chen Zhao to drive faster, faster, and faster. It took them less than 20 minutes to cover a distance of more than 50 kilometers. Xian Jia hurriedly jumped out of the car. He was about to run into the building when Chen Zhao stopped him. Don't run so fast. They don't know the building. Where is it then? On this rooftop. Xian Jia and Chen Zhao went to the rooftop. Xian Jia immediately saw a few people lying before Gaia. They were all black. They were all lying on the ground, clutching their body parts and wailing. One or two of them had clearly broken arms and legs. Gaia, did you find out where they came from? Yeah, I think they were sent by someone called Dolores, Gaia said. Dolores? Who? It should be a gang leader. I'll ask someone. Chen Zhao was about to take out his phone when Xinjia said with a serious expression. I know who he is. Oh? You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.